Okay, folks, I'd like to start off tonight with one of my favorite pieces of music. A man from California wrote this song about 7 or 8 years ago, and I think it's the greatest piece of music that was ever written about this wonderful plant. So we'll start with the song.
Fiber, oil, medicine, and fuel. But if the person sees, we won't have no need for any of the oil. We can make paints and these, but our call will back next season. It'll fix the soil, the most nutritious seed we can put in our mouth with omega-6 and 3. We can feed the world with the tree of life and sustainably. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house. God's plan going wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. We will leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa. Well, the flowers of the female hair plant make the best medicines on earth. Helps cancer and AIDS patients eat their food. Helps healing with depression, overcome the blues. Glaucoma, epilepsy, nausea, insomnia, stress, neurosis, psychosis, pain, PMS. All the studies have been done and all the doctors agree. But they can't make money off this plant, you see, because it's free. It grows from the seed, wild and free, like we ought to be. You know the future, growing in our own backyards. If we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. Build a house from it. God's plan going wild and free. Living the way that we ought to be. Leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. La 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 la. In this modern day and age, when we see the lack spirituality, this one single plant can bring us back almost 2,000 years in history. The Shiva, Puranas, the Jesus, the Christ, the Buddha, the pagans, the goddess, the light, the people of all the animals, the human, all the trees, to realize the God speaks inside me. The earth is a mother, we gotta take care of the earth. The earth is the mother that gives life, birth, and we can heal our relation to the single green plant. We can start right now. We cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Instead, we can make our faith, build a house from it. God's plan going wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa. Yeah, la 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 la. Whoa.
Well, isn't that a great piece of music? When I first heard this song, it amazed me because my dear friend Jack Hare, he fought this battle for 40 years, and when I heard that music and the way he did it, he put to music everything that Jack Hare and I have been preaching. So I think it should be a #1 hit. Now, I would like the folks here tonight to know that this is not, I'm not encouraging people to go break the laws. I am encouraging you to try to change the laws. You know, I mean, this medicine should be freely available to anyone who needs it. But this is presented for educational purposes. Now, I'll get on with my story. I don't know if we need any video for any cut to that. Okay. Well, back in 1969, my 22-year-old cousin was diagnosed with cancer. Now, he was a big, strong, strapping young man, and 3 years later, the cancer killed him. And I watched him go from 200 pounds down to about 50 pounds when he died. But the thing was, at that time, cancer was quite rare. I mean, I was about 23 years old when my cousin passed away, and he was the first person I ever knew that died from cancer. So it was quite rare. So about 2 years after my cousin had died, I worked at All Saints Hospital in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia. And I got in my car this day, and I was leaving work, and I just turned the radio on, and this announcer was on there, and he was laughing like a fool. But he was saying that they had a report there. They didn't name the report at the time, but he said a medical report out of the United States indicated that THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, had been found to kill cancer cells. So where my cousin had just died, you know, it sunk in. It stayed in my memory. But time went on, and I never heard nothing more about any more research. There was no more mention of THC curing cancer. So I just thought it must have been a joke. But anyway, years later, in 1997, I was injured. I had a bad head injury at work. And it left me with what they call post-concussion syndrome. My head rings 24 hours a day. It still does to this very day. But at least the oil helps control it when I have the oil. But with this type of illness, this type of injury, what they did, they put me on all of these different chemicals. And every one of the chemicals that the doctors prescribed me just made me worse. You know, I mean, it was just one pill after another, and I didn't know from day to day what I'd be taking next. But once we got about a year after I was injured, I was watching an episode of The Nature of Things with Dr. David Suzuki. It's a very popular show in Canada. And it was called Reefer Madness 2. But it showed all of these medical patients that were smoking hemp. And it was helping them with their medical conditions. You know, people suffering from spasms or many different things. Like smoking it will lower your blood sugar somewhat for diabetics. There are benefits to smoking, but it's the least medicinal way to use the substance. So after seeing the show, I went out and I purchased some hemp from local growers. And I tried it. And sure enough, it worked better than anything the medical system was giving me. You see, with this noise I had, I couldn't sleep. I needed something that would knock me out. And the marijuana, when I smoked marijuana, it did help me somewhat. But it still wasn't the ultimate answer. But still, it was better than anything the medical system, had given me. But, I worked for the medical system myself for 25 years. So I had faith in the system. So I continued to take their pills. Pill after pill after pill, and I got nothing but worse. So one day I was in my doctor's office in about 1999, and I said to him, because I'd asked these doctors for a prescription, so I could legally obtain the hemp, because in Canada they do have a marijuana access program. But they wouldn't give me a prescription. So, but in 1999, I asked my doctor one day, I said, because he always used excuses like, well, hemp is still under study, or it's bad for the lungs. And so one day I said to him, what would you think if I produced the essential oil from that plant and ingested it as a medication? Well, he told me, he said that would be much more medicinal. So, but still, he wouldn't give me a prescription, so I could go get the material. So, I stayed, even after that, I stayed with the medical system for 2 more years. In 2001, he called me into his office one day, and he said, there's nothing more we can do for you. We've given you all the chemicals. We've tried everything we know. It doesn't work. So you're on your own. Well, I worked for the system for 32 years. I had a government job. And this is the best they can do for me? You're on your own, and now you're because the only thing that helps you is the cannabis. So, I was pretty disgusted, with what I'd seen there. And so anyway, I went home, and I had nowhere to turn. So I started ingesting this oil. And believe me, in the beginning, it was kind of a scary experience because I didn't really know what this medicine would do. I knew that the hemp smoking, it would relax you, but when you start ingesting the condensed oil, I wasn't too sure of this stuff. So I started taking little doses, and by the time the doctor had cut me loose, put simply, I couldn't even think straight. I mean, I didn't. My coordination was bad. As a matter of fact, I couldn't leave the house without one of these. Now I use it as a pointer or for self-defense. But anyway, when I turned to the hemp, it started helping me to sleep. It would literally knock me out at night. I could sleep like a baby. And in a very short time, people started seeing me. I was looking better. And my memory was coming back from all the damage the pills had. I mean, by the time I went off the chemical pills, I couldn't hardly remember my own name. That's how bad it was. So the oil started bringing my mind back. And then all of a sudden one day I realized that I no longer had arthritis. When I was 45 years old, I had arthritis in both knees. Well, no arthritis there. So this is another miracle that worked for me. And, there were several things. I started losing weight. I lost about 30 pounds, which is around 15 kilos. And the weight was just coming off me. And it scared me because I thought, it could take me down too far. But my weight reduced, and it brought me right back to a healthy weight. I mean, the stomach muscles and everything, just like when I was young. I don't do any exercises. But this oil, it brings you right back down to a healthy weight while it detoxifies you. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. I really had no idea of this medicine. And in the early days, when I first started to make this medicine, I had, first I should mention it's skin cancer, and then I'll talk about the burn. But this was 2002, late 2002. I had these three areas on my skin. I had one by my eye, and I had one on my cheek, and I had one on my chest. So I went into the doctor, and they looked at it, and they said, it looks like skin cancer. And they were concerned about this one next to my eye. So I went in, I had it surgically removed, and then I was supposed to go back in at a later date to have the other two areas done. So it was about a week, I guess, after that I'd had the surgery done. I was looking at it one night in the mirror, and that report I heard back in the 1970s on the radio, it clicked back into my mind. THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. Well, I'm making this oil, and I'm using it for sleeping. So I knew the oil would be full of THC, but I almost didn't put the oil on the cancer because I thought, well, if this actually was true, the oil I was eating would have cured the cancer. But the skin, our skin is the biggest organ on our body. And in reality, the oil couldn't get in, or the cancer couldn't get into me, but it could survive on the surface. Because, I just wasn't taking enough oil at that time. So, anyway, I went down to the bathroom and I put a little bit of oil on this cancer and the one on my chest. And 4 days later, I never felt a thing. There was no sensation that anything was happening. 4 days later, I take the bandages off, and it's just pink skin. And I was just amazed. It's wonderful, but, can this be true? And so I started telling friends of mine about, what had happened. And they laughed at me. The minute I said I cured my cancer with marijuana, it was like, you're out to lunch. So it wasn't a very good scene. But about 7 weeks later, the cancer that they had surgically removed, it came roaring right back. And anybody that's ever had basal cell carcinoma, they know what it is. It feels like you have splinters in your face, in the affected area. And it swells up and bleeds. It's typical skin cancer. But after seeing the other two heal, well, I put the oil on it. When it came back, I put the oil on it. 4 days later, I removed the bandages. Now, that was over 8 years ago. I've never treated them since. So I knew, they had done a pathology report when they had operated. So I went down to my doctor's office, and when I went in, I asked him for my pathology report, and his wife, it was actually his receptionist, the doctor's receptionist was his wife. And she passes me the report, and I read it, basal cell carcinoma, skin cancer. Well, then I knew that this oil had cured the cancer. So I knew the doctor I had, my family doctor, I knew him quite well. So I said to his wife, I said, I'd like to come back in the evening and have a talk with Dave about something I'm working on. And she said, what would this be about? And I said, well, those other two cancers I had, I said, I cured those with hemp oil. And then the one that came back, or the one that they had surgically removed, came back, so I cured it too. Now, I was standing in my doctor's waiting room, and there was like 5 or 6 other people there. And his secretary, she just went like this. The doctor will not go there. The doctor will not prescribe this. I'm standing here, I cured my own cancer, and you don't want to know? It was like the Twilight Zone. So, anyway, it was a long drive home that day. But right after I got back to Spring Hill, or just outside of Spring Hill where I live, I had many friends that had conditions, things that wouldn't heal. Diabetic ulcers and infections and that type of thing. And other people with skin cancer. So what I did, I started supplying the oil to people free of charge. I was growing the plants and producing the medicine, and more people came to take it. Excuse me. But I had my cold break. Now, I never hid anything, about this, because I did not consider what I was doing to be a criminal activity. When you're making a natural, harmless medicine and you're giving it to people to help them, is that a crime? So I started a campaign in 2003 to bring this to the attention of the proper authorities. So the first one I went to was Dr. David Suzuki, because it was his show that had actually led me in that direction. Okay. But when I contacted them, there was no interest. And actually, I contacted them twice. And I even offered to send them some oil so they could do their own assessment at the Suzuki Foundation. But they said that they weren't a research facility. You don't need research with this oil. You just take it and put it on, find somebody with a diabetic ulcer or skin cancer or that type of thing, or a bad burn, and put the oil on and it heals them. And you can see it in no time. Now, that one, I forgot about the burn, so I have to go back to that. Well, right after I cured my own cancer, my own skin cancer, it was about that time that it all kind of clicked in place. And it was really startling when I started to realize what I had discovered with this oil. Because in the early days when I first started to make the oil, I was still having the effects of the chemical medications. So one day when I tried to make the oil, I caught myself on fire. And I mean, I caught myself on fire, severe burn. My whole right hand, 3/4 of it had melted. And it was just hanging in big gobs. And 3rd-degree burns are nasty. So I had put it in a bucket of water, and my girlfriend came down, and she as soon as she wanted to see it, so I pulled it out. And I know this sounds horrible, but it's totally painless. But all of these gobs that were hanging, she just took a pair of scissors and cut them off, because you couldn't feel it. But the strange thing was, I was still having so much effect from the chemicals that were in my body, from the medical system, I didn't even notice what was taking place. But within 11 days, that hand completely healed, leaving no scars. There's not a scar in that hand. And at that point, I was so full of chemicals, I said, well, I must be a good healer. It just didn't even click what this oil had done. But right after I cured my own skin cancer. That's when I realized what this medicine could do. Or I was beginning to realize what it could do. So right after I contacted Dr. Suzuki, and of course they did nothing, then I started contacting, I went to the Minister of Health in Canada, I went to all the political parties, I went to the Canadian Cancer Society, everywhere you could think to go. So, I just didn't know where else to turn. And finally, we even went to the United Nations about this. Nobody would look into it. So it was very frustrating, believe me. But as time went on, more and more people kept coming, to me for help, and I just kept making the oil and giving it to them. And in 2004, I went to our local newspaper in Spring Hill, and they did a full-page article detailing everything I did. It's like, as I said, I didn't hide it. But no police came near or anything, but a lot more people came looking for help. So I just continued treating them. And then in the spring of 2005, I had, it was in 2004 that I actually started treating people, or supplying the oil to people, so they could use it for internal cancers. And the results we got were magnificent. So the bartender at the local Legion branch, he had heard about what I was doing. His name was Rick DeWire. And he wanted to meet me. So I went over and talked to him, and he said, would you mind if I came with you? When you're doing, I'd like to meet these patients you're talking about. Well, actually, he knew some of them. So he came with me. I remember the first night he went with me. That was it. Because he's seen that once you see the proof with your own eyes, you can't deny it. And especially when they're people that you actually know. You know they had this condition. So Rick was totally amazed with it all, and we decided that we would have a meeting at the local Legion branch, open to the public, and I would bring patients in. And, I'm a veteran's son. My father fought in the invasion of Normandy. So, and the Royal Canadian Legion is supposed to stand for the rights of the children of veterans. Well, actually, they're supposed to stand for the rights of all Canadians. But anyway, we decided we'd have this meeting. So we had a meeting. I think about 45 or 50 people attended. And we had about a dozen people there that had used the oil for different conditions. And just like I said, the results were just fabulous. So we took a videotape of that meeting. And we sent it out to W5. Now these are shows in Canada that are quite popular. W5, the Fifth Estate, and we sent a copy to David Suzuki, The Nature of Things. But we never heard a word. Nobody did a thing. So, and as time went on, I started to realize, like when I didn't get any reply back, from the RCMP, when I didn't get any reply back from all of these different political people I had talked to, and I got no reply back from, no reply from David Suzuki, that was for sure. But, I just thought someone up there had to be honest enough to do something about this. And by the spring of 2004, I was beginning to realize that they didn't want a cure. They didn't want to help us. So by that time, there were so many people coming to me that I just continued producing the medicine. And I just thought that soon the system would regain their sanity, and allow this to take place. So after we had shot the video, as I said, we sent that out in many different directions. To the news, or to these information shows, and then I took a copy of it because right on the video that when we made it, I told the public, the audience that day, that I was going to grow it right in my backyard. I mean, why should I run through the woods and try to hide this? I had a nice open hillside in my backyard, so I was going to grow it right in my backyard and provide the medicine to the people. And as I said, I wasn't charging. So I took a copy of the same tape, the same video, I took it into the RCMP, I gave it to them, and I asked them if I could have what they confiscated, so I could make more medicine. But, no, they didn't say. All I talked to was a receptionist. But 3 months later, I never heard a word from these people. Then 3 months later, the same detachment came and raided me. And I just found it unbelievable. And the worst of it is, one of the Mounties, or one of the RCMP officers that were there that day, they said to me that you know, because I was very mad when I seen the plants being taken. And, you know, they said to me, we believe everything you're saying. Well, I said, if you believe everything that I'm telling you, then what are you doing? You know, you're carrying the cure for cancer under the ground. You know, this is medicine. Didn't make any difference. So I was taken, I was arrested, I was charged with cultivation, trafficking, and possession. But I still had it in my head that sooner or later these people would wise up. So my first day in court, I took a video in, the video from the meeting, I took that in, and when I had taken the video to the RCMP 3 months before I was raided, we had videotaped that too, because I really didn't trust the police. So I took all this information in, and I gave it to the Crown Prosecutor. And I told him, I said, this is something that, this doesn't belong in a court of law. This is medicine. You know, this is working wonderful miracles for people. But it didn't make any difference. They continued on with their nonsense, you know, like, you grew it, you know, well, they call it trafficking. Even if you just pass a joint in Canada, that's trafficking. But I was giving the oil away, so to them, that was trafficking. It was disgusting. So, then in 2006, I went ahead and I planted my backyard again. Another 1,100 plants in my backyard. And, of course, they came in again. This time, they didn't arrest me. They just said, we're with the marijuana eradication program, and they took the plants. They never even had a search warrant. They never went through my house. So I was getting truly disgusted with it, because there were so many people coming to me then, because the papers had written some articles. So, you know, people were looking for help. So then I had to turn to other underground growers to supply what we needed to produce the medicine for people. But it just continued on, one miracle after another. And, I honestly believed in 2003, when I started doing this, I really thought they wanted a cure. I mean, they told us all our lives, you know, we want the cure for cancer. We want preventative medicine. Well, this is preventative medicine. It's the greatest preventative medicine on this planet, because it's harmless. But that went on anyway, and then finally, the court system decided to keep pulling me into their courts, and they suggested that I should mount a charter challenge. Well, in Canada, we have what you call the Charter of Rights. And under the Charter of Rights, you have the right to life. But as I was to find out, you have the right to life as long as you're not going to use a hemp plant to heal yourself. Because under those circumstances, you don't have the right to life anymore. They won't let you have it. So it was a pretty sad experience. But I went out and I put out 120 affidavits. I gathered 48 affidavits finally. And that's when I really started to figure out more what the human race was really about. Because I had treated so many people by that time that I thought I would get all the affidavits back. But I had quite a time. Finally, I did get 48 out of 120. And there was people I went to for an affidavit that I cured their cancer. And they told me they didn't want to get involved. So there's your human race. That's what's wrong. It's like, we're all getting this self-centered way of life. You know, well, thanks for curing me, but I don't care if anybody else has the right to the medication. Well, I mean, that was a pretty rude awakening. And then I ran, we had a federal election came up that year, so I ran in the federal election as an independent under the banner of curing, curing people's cancer with this medicine made from this plant. The audiences, when I spoke, they just kind of sat there and looked at me. You know, is he telling the truth? But nobody was disputing anything I said. Because you can't dispute this. It's as plain as the nose on your face. You know, the medicine works. And it's the same when I go to any of these things, these events, or if I'm speaking on an interview on radio or whatever. I always tell people, don't believe a single word I'm saying. Simply go out, get about 30 grams of good hemp bud, produce the essential oil, find somebody with a diabetic ulcer or skin cancer or severe burn, put the oil on, put a bandage on, watch what happens. So anybody can prove this. Well, anyway, needless to say, I didn't get elected. I got 524 votes, I believe it was. But I had gone through, when we finally did get into the charter challenge, it was crazy what they did, because I had 48 sworn affidavits, and the judge just said, well, these are anecdotal. You know, well, what's anecdotal about affidavits about something that has been used as a medicine for 5,000 years? What's anecdotal about that? You know, it's always been medicine. But no, anecdotal, doesn't matter. And then the judge turned around and said that I didn't present any life-threatening condition. So he's telling me suddenly now that skin cancer isn't life-threatening. Well, I got news for him. It's very life-threatening. So, I mean, there's a lot of people dying from skin cancer too. And also he said, like my post-concussion syndrome. Well, that doesn't threaten your life. Well, when you have what I have, this type of injury, you can't control your blood pressure. It goes up and down. I mean, it's terrible. And there's a lot of problems associated with an injury like that are life-threatening. But by that time, I was just fed up. So when we went back into the court, they said, well, you can appeal your charter challenge decision. But I had already seen enough. I knew these people were corrupt. So I just said, I want this to go back into the main court system in the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia, and I want a jury to hear this case. But anyway, that's what happened. Finally, they brought us into the court, and the jury did hear the case, but they wouldn't let me present my evidence. Now, I had 10 patients at my trial, 10 patients. Some of them had been cured of terminal cancers. I had them there ready to testify. I also had 6 doctors there ready to testify. They wouldn't let them on the stand. They said it had no bearing on my case. So it tells you right there they weren't looking too hard for a cure for cancer, were they? But I still thought, no matter what, I still had all of these. We'd done a lot of research, into this to find out as much as we could about it. So I had boxes full of research papers. But again, they wouldn't let us introduce it as evidence. And so the only one that was left to testify on my behalf was me. So I took the stand for about 2 hours, and I explained to people exactly, what I had done. And, and they said, well, what would you do? If you found a cure for cancer, who would you go to? Wouldn't you do the things that I did? So, that part of it was, it's really disturbing. When you realize it just seems that no one cares. Until they're the ones with the cancer, then they care. But, let's see. After I was done speaking that day, I was on the stand for about 2 hours. And by the time I was done speaking, everybody in the audience, there was only a few people there, they were sure that I had won the case hands down. Because even when the Mounties had testified against me, I said, I brought up the article they had done in the paper. I asked these police officers when they were on the stand, I said, would a criminal go to a newspaper and have a full-page article done with his picture and everything? Criminals don't do that. So they had to admit it right in front of the jury that this was not criminal behavior. But it didn't make any difference. So finally, when the case was finally over, the jury was sequestered. And they were only about 3 hours they were out. And we got the call to come back, and they said that, the jury's ready with a verdict. And I was sure that we had won. I couldn't imagine anything else. But, so when I went back into the courtroom that day, there was 2 prosecutors. There was Monica McQueen. She was the prosecutor from the Justice Department. She was the one that did most of the talking. And then there was a Crown prosecutor from Amherst named Doug Shatford. He actually sat there through the whole case and didn't open his mouth. But when I came back into the courtroom that day, he was missing. And the Queen was there, but Shatford wasn't. So 3 or 4 minutes later, Shatford comes in and sits down. And when I stood up, to take the verdict, it was like, guilty, guilty, guilty. And I'm standing there thinking, guilty of what? Saving people's lives? Am I a criminal because I help people? It was just unimaginable. But the jury, they were acting very strangely. When they left that day, they were walking with their heads way down. I just couldn't imagine what had taken place. So it was the very next day, a lady that was in the audience, Margaret Dwyer, she calls me up on the phone and she said, should the crown prosecutor be leaving the jury room? And I said, what? And she said, well, Rick, she said, I seen him leave the jury room about 3 minutes before the jury came in with your verdict. And I'm like, oh, this can't be true. I said, Margaret, go back to the courthouse, tell them you lost a stone out of your ring. And make sure of what you're saying, because jury tampering is a very serious charge. So she went right back to the exact seat she was sitting in, and she told me, she said, when I looked down the hallway, there was only one room, only one doorway I could see. And that's the jury room door. And she said, I seen the Crown prosecutor exit that door 3 minutes before they came in with your verdict. So we called the judge to tell him, what are we going to do? So they never said anything about another court case. They just told us to appear in Amherst 2 weeks later. So Mrs. Dwyer and myself, we went up to Amherst, and when we walked in, there was a judge, Judge Cascio sitting on the bench. Here was the 2 prosecutors, and they had some pasty-faced lawyer from Halifax representing them. And then the judge said to Mrs. Dwyer, he said, I hope you know that if you're caught in a lie in this court, that you could go to jail for 14 years for perjury. Margaret Dwyer, she never batted an eye. She just said, look, I'm here to tell the truth, and she took the stand. Well, the lawyers went at her, and they tried to defrock what she was saying. But they couldn't. I mean, Margaret Dwyer is one of the most truthful people I've ever met. And at the end of it, they couldn't disprove a thing. So, but the judge still said, he said, I think this is something that you and Mrs. Dwyer cooked up to derail your sentencing. So, I mean, there was no question they were out to hang me. But it was about that time, I guess it was about 2 months later, just before my sentencing, that we released the documentary Run from the Cure, which made the legal system a bit uncomfortable because that put the information out to a lot of people. But the day of my sentencing, when I went to be sentenced, it was the strangest thing, because the judge was sitting there and he said, in my 34 years in the legal system, he said, I've never seen a case like this. There was no criminal intent. And the people in the audience that day, they clapped. I thought we were all going to get arrested. And then he turned right around, and although they wouldn't let me introduce the scientific evidence, when the court case was going on, he turned right around and said, the scientific evidence does exist to back up everything he's saying. So I was thinking, this is just getting better and better. And then he turned and he said, well, of course, I had all these patients. And he knew that there was many of them right in the courtroom. And he said he has all these patients. And they too back his position. Now, I was facing 12 years in jail. It's up to the judge's discretion. But what they did, they gave me a $2,000 fine and a gun restriction. Now, there wasn't even a gun in my house. The only people waving guns around were the police. But they never even put me on probation. But and I think really the only reason that I got the fine is because I kept telling the judge off. I mean, what these people were doing in that courtroom was so outrageous. They knew that we had a cure here, and they were working with the system to hold it back. And I remember one time I said to the judge, before this is over, I said, you're the one that's going to be going to jail. You people are criminals. And they didn't like some of my comments. And I remember another one, they said, one point there, they said, well, Mr. Simpson, you can't take this personally. And I got right out of the chair and I said, take it personally? I said, because of those raids in 2005, 2006, people had died. Do I take that personally? You're damn right I do. And the judge, down goes his head. Couldn't look me in the face. That's the Canadian legal system. And I hope yours is better. But at that point, once I was done with the court case, I was really sickened with Canada. I was looking to go to another country where I might find some freedom. And but what happened is people just kept coming. You know, I was having dozens and dozens of people. There was times there was like 6 and 8 cars in my yard. Everybody needing the medicine. And so, I mean, it really had taken the wind out of my sails going through the medical or through the court system. But I just continued on. I was still thinking, you know, sooner or later these people have to wise up. But of course they never do. But anyway, there were so many things going on. Finally, I mean, I couldn't supply the medicine to everyone because I was buying up everything within a 50-mile radius of my home. All the good hemp, I was buying it up. And all the people that wanted to smoke it were mad at me. Well, he bought up all the good pot. But I had a much better reason than they had. So it just continued to expand and expand. And I had police officers coming to me. I treated police officers and their families. So like I said, there was nothing hidden. And then people over here in Europe, I mean, I was doing seminars in Canada. I would take my own vehicle, drive hundreds of miles, and go do seminars to try to get the message out. And then some people in the Czech Republic got wind of what I was doing in 2009. So they turned around and they asked me if I'd be willing to come over and do a speaking tour in the Czech Republic. And that would have been October of 2009. So I said, certainly. And so it was arranged that Dr. Lemire Hanoush was to do the tour with me. Now, Dr. Hanoush is one of the greatest experts in this field in the world. He discovered anandamide back in the 1980s. He works with Dr. Mollisham at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Mollisham discovered THC. So these are the top guys in their field. So Lemire and I, we spoke at several different functions together. But we didn't get the crowds we thought we would get. But we did get, you know, sometimes there was a decent crowd. But I remember one point we spoke at the medical school in Olomouc in the Czech Republic. Now, the medical school in Olomouc is one of the oldest medical schools in Europe. So Dr. Hanoush spoke, and then I spoke. And then when I came down off the stage, this young medical student walked up to me. And she looked at me and she said, "You're calling doctors murderers." And I said, "Well, dear, if I give somebody poison and they die from its effects, what would you call me?" And then I looked at her and I said, "Does it make a difference if you're wearing a white coat?" And then you could tell she became very angry. And she looked at me and she said, "The medical faculty of this university wants you back here on the 26th of this month, and they're going to set you straight." Well, of course, that's all it took. I said, "You get every doctor in the Czech Republic here on the 26th, and we'll see who gets set straight." So the people that were putting on the tour, Baron Ramsey Hemp Cosmetics, they got excited when they heard this. Because they thought, you know, well, if the university takes me on, then the news media will get involved. But when I talked to Gingrich Bear, I told him, I said, "Gingrich, they're not going to take me on." And he said, "Well, they just said they were." And I said, "I don't care what they said. You know," I said, "there's no possible way they can take me on because I'm the only one that's telling the truth." And, well, 3 days later, the medical school called up and canceled. They decided it wasn't a good idea. So then, I mean, it's not that they don't know, but they're resisting the change. That's the problem. And, well, right after that, we did the tour in October. I went back to Canada, made medicine as fast as I could for 3 weeks, and then I came back to the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. And they made me Freedom Fighter of the Year in 2009. But while I was in Amsterdam, I got a call from my son that the Maui, the RCMP, had raided my house again. Well, there was nothing in my house. You know, all the medicine had been made, distributed. There was nothing left except some compost in the backyard. Because that's what I do with the material. Once it's done, I wash the resin off it and dump it in the backyard. So, when my son called me, I said, well, what are they saying? And he said, they're saying that they found 70 pounds of hemp or marijuana in your house. Well, I knew that was ridiculous. And then they said they found weapons, restricted weapons. Well, the only weapon in my house was a kid's pellet gun, which is hardly restricted. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I realized what they were doing, they were trying to frame me. Or to make it so that I couldn't return to Canada because I was getting such a following there. There were so many people knew that I was telling the truth about all this, and more people were coming. So I think their idea really was to keep me out of Canada. Well, it worked. I've been here now for 17 months, and it's been a real adventure over here in Europe, just seeing these different countries and meeting all the different people, and I've met some great people over here. But I've spread the word in every country I've been in. I've spoken to governments. As a matter of fact, I'm going on within the next week or two. I'll be speaking to the Slovenian government about this. But the governments are interested now, and they know the medicine is coming because they know it works, and you can't keep it from the people. Because like when Christian Lorette made that, when he made the Run from the Cure, well, that showed everybody, you know, how to make your own medicine. And I have to give Christian Lorette a lot of credit because the man made that video with a camcorder and a computer that blew up every 15 minutes. So I don't know how he did it, but he did a great job. And I think it was mostly his efforts that kept me out of jail, really. But at the present time, I mean, we're looking at. Excuse me, just 1 sec. What's this up here for? Oh, Rick, I'm going to get into that yet. All right. This is the first time with PowerPoint, so I'm not so sure. I probably should be running it myself. But the governments over here are awakening to the fact that this medicine is coming. The National Cancer Institute in the United States, they just put up on their website, that's at www.gov, it's the government website, that cannabinoids have antitumor effects, which means they cure cancer, or kill cancer. But it's just, it's so crazy when you look at these things, like the study I heard in about 1975, that was the Medical School of Virginia study. And the government, I mean, that study was hidden. It was 36 years ago that this study was on the radio. So they've known for 36 years how to cure cancer. But the American government and the Canadian government had this plant listed as a non-medicinal plant. Now, I find that very strange because now, if you look it up, the American government since 2003 have had medical patents on that plant. Medical patents for a non-medicinal plant? Does that make any sense to you? It's just a big ugly game that they're playing with us and our health. And it has to come to an end. And we're going to see that it does. Well, another thing I should have mentioned too. This medicine is not just about humans. It's about animals too. Like we've treated many dogs with cancers. It works for all animals because they all have cannabinoid receptors in their bodies. Actually, I love treating dogs because they have a fast metabolism, and a dog will heal in no time. I've seen dogs that were dying of terminal cancer within a week cured, right back to normal. So, you know, it's something that it's not just about the human race. It's about all the species that live on this planet. It can promote much better health. Now, back about 2004, after I had been in touch with everyone, I really started to wake up to what the system was doing. Now, I started watching documentaries like Loose Change, and I started listening to the work of people like David Icke, Alex Jones, Jesse Ventura, And what they were doing, it had a profound effect on me because it went hand in hand with what I've seen with the medical system, or the medical industry, the corruption, the lies. And people like, David Icke and Jesse Ventura, well, they say, oh, okay, or even me, they say, oh, these people are conspiracy theorists. No, we're not. We're just people that are awake and we can actually see what's going on around us. But most people go through life and they don't take the time to think about it, about what really is being done to them. So, this, believe me, you can call it a conspiracy if you want, but this thing is real. And it's killing you and it's killing your loved ones. So we have to bring it to an end. Now, actually, people, there are actually people like David Icke and Alex Jones, and these people that are trying to bring the truth out. I mean, their only wish is to bring the truth to the attention of the public. Before we do any more damage to ourselves and this beautiful planet that we call home. The conspiracy that I'm speaking about is real, and I hope before you leave here tonight that you can grasp the truth in what I'm saying. So I'll discuss my criminal status now. They did convict me in Canada. I do have a criminal record because of what I did, which makes it awkward because there's places like I can't go to the United States. You can't get into the States. There's different countries that I can't go now. So it kind of restricts me a bit, but I can travel freely here in the EU and in Croatia and different countries in this area. So that's what I've been doing for the past few months.
Ja se ispričavam. Javio sam vam samo iz hotela da poručimo Rijeka 901 OL. Crna Ibiza smeta negdje gdje je. Jeste se prepoznali u tome? Ako ste se prepoznali, molim, reagirajte. Excuse me, we had some car on a bad place.
It's okay. That explains it.
Continue, thanks.
I guess we can continue. Well, as I said, the Canadian government made me a criminal, for the crime of helping others who are suffering and dying. When you live in a country that persecutes you for such behavior, in truth, you are not living in much of a country. I can honestly say that I am no longer proud to call myself a Canadian. And to me, the country of my birth has become little more than a police state. Because that's really what it is. In Canada, we are told that we are living in a democracy and that we have rights and freedoms. But in reality, we have no rights, and the only freedom you have is to do as you're told. That's not freedom. My father was badly wounded in World War II fighting for democracy and freedom. But the Canada he was fighting for no longer upholds the values on which it was founded. So I feel that the Canadian people will never really know freedom until they rid themselves of the corruption that has ruined their way of life. I have no plans to return to Canada, and perhaps I never will. Unless the people of Canada stand up and take their rights back, and if they do, Canada may once again become a decent place to live. But at present, I don't want no part of Canada. Now I'm going to give you a brief history of him and how it became illegal. Yeah, I can do that. Am I getting anybody's way if I do this over here? Yeah. So I could point at them. I gotta use this stick. Okay. Now we're going back to 8000 BC. Civilization, agriculture, and hemp textile industries begin in Asia and Europe. 2800 BC, called the superior herb in the world's first medical text. And that was in ancient China, 2800 years before Christ. 700 BC, the ancient Persian religious text, the Vedas. They listed the most medicinal plants known to man at that time. The number one plant, cannabis, and it still is. All right, 1000 BC. Well, there's a story on hemp medicine, how much it was used. 1000 BC to 1900 AD, hemp extracts are the number 1, 2, and 3 most important and most frequently used medicine for 2/3 of the world's people. Is hemp not medicine? And then we get the Chinese, they invented paper, 100 BC. And then we have the birth of Christ. Now, I'm not a religious person, but if there was a healer walking around this planet 2,000 years ago named Jesus Christ, I have a feeling he was using him to work the medical miracles. Because it was widely known. I mean, it had been in medicine for thousands of years at that time. And it was the only medicine people had. Because there was no trauma centers or no big pharmaceutical companies. They used nature to heal themselves. Okay. And this is another case where religion gets involved. 1000 to 1600 AD, approximate period of the Roman Catholic Inquisition. A time in Western Europe when 10 to 33% of the entire population was tortured or put to death for owning a dinner fork, taking a bath, or using cannabis as medicine. So the church stood against it. Now that part I find very strange. How could a church stand against a God-given plant? Wasn't it God that put the plant here? They get a religion stand, and they're not the only religion. I mean, they all do. They all seem to act the same. Now there's Joan of Arc, for example, during 1430 to 31, Joan of Arc was accused of using cannabis and other herbs as a religious sacrament. Very serious crime. But in 1470, Gutenberg Bible printed on hemp paper. 1619, America's first law is enacted in Jamestown Colony, Virginia, ordering all farmers to grow hemp. Because they needed it in those days. It was used for, they made that's where we get canvas, the ropes, the Bibles. They had to have the hemp supplies for their babies. And plus it was widely used as a food source. 1776, first and second drafts of the Declaration of Independence are written on hemp paper. Now, I'll go ahead here a little bit, and I want to go back to George Washington. In 1842 to 1890, extracts and derivatives of the hemp plant are the second and third most prescribed medicines in the USA. E.I. Lilly, Parker Davis, Squibb Brothers, and other firms produce these medicines through the 1890s. Well, actually, they produced them right through until the 1930s. I don't know how that got done. Little mistake. But something I wanted to mention here is, like people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, these were the founding fathers of the United States of America. They were hemp farmers. George Washington is very well recorded that George Washington used to like to sit out on his veranda at night and smoke his hemp in his pipe. Now, these are the same people that authored these wonderful documents like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. So it appears that the hemp didn't affect their thinking abilities. And if they had lived up, if they had stood, by the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the United States would be a much better country than it is today. But George Washington himself, as I said, he had a hemp plantation. But George got a bad case of streptococcus. And streptococcus is nasty stuff, although hemp oil will take care of it quite easily. But at that time, they didn't know this, so the doctors, the good doctors came in to save George. So George is laying there in bed, and they come in and they drained half his blood. Now, surprisingly, that didn't heal him. So the next day, they gave him mercury. Well, that finished the job. You know, it's just so insane. And, you know, and it was only actually 100 years, or just over 100 years later, 150 years later, that they're outlawing this and telling the public all of these lies about it. You know, it's medicine. And if George had used it, he'd still be with us. Okay. Now, it's like I said, now here's another thing with like Eli Lilly, Parker Davis, Squibb, all of these companies that produce this medicine. Now, back in the mid-1800s, it was common practice for drug companies to produce the essential oils from many different herbs and spices, or herbs and medicinal plants. They produced the essential oil, they sold them to the public as medicine. Now, where cannabis had been known for thousands of years to be the most medicinal plant, then of course they're going to make the essential oil from it, aren't they? Well, I've done all kinds of research on this. I've never been able to find any pharmaceutical company that ever actually supplied the real essential oil from the plant. What they did, they supplied it in tincture form. A little bit of oil with alcohol. Or Eli Lilly, they sold pain. They're hash pills. They sold them as painkillers in the 1880s. So, I don't really. The only thing I can see here, I honestly think that these pharmaceutical companies had to know. Because the minute you boil the alcohol, the oil, you're producing the same stuff that I make, and what I've been doing all the healing with. So if these pharmaceutical companies manufactured this stuff worldwide for years, and they didn't know that, then they deserve a PhD in stupid. All right, now let's get to the marital pleasures. 1890s, popular American marriage guides recommend cannabis extracts for heightened marital pleasures. Women's temperance groups lobbying for alcohol prohibition suggest cannabis as a suitable substitute for the demon drink. I agree. Okay. Well, that's George and Thomas, yeah. All right. Now, I should mention here, in the 1880s, the pharmaceutical companies began to put their chemicals together. If you combine certain types of chemicals, then you can patent that, and you can sell it as a drug. So they couldn't patent hemp at the time, so that's the route they wanted to go down, where something they could charge whatever they wanted for. Because hemp was just, well, I think they were actually terrified, because if the farmers had to realize what they were, like farmers everywhere in the world were freely growing hemp. Here in Europe, in North America, if those farmers had found out that they were growing the most wonderful healing plant, and you could make this magnificent medicine from it, how long would the drug companies be in business? They would have been gone. So their aim was really to get rid of the dreaded marijuana plant. Well, it wasn't called marijuana then; it was still called hemp or cannabis. But their aim was to get rid of this plant and take it away from public use. And then in 1898, the Hearst newspaper announced Spaniards, Mexican Americans, and Latinos after the seizure by the Mexican government of 800,000 acres of prime Hearst-owned timberland in Mexico by the marijuana-smoking army of Pancho Villa. Vigorous slander of the Mexican people continues in Hearst and other publications for 3 decades. Because of Hearst's personal prejudice against the African Americans and Hispanics, Hearst's covert motivations to link them with the proliferation of an evil drug, the term marijuana, a word totally unfamiliar to the average hemp-loving American citizen, is used to exclusively identify cannabis throughout this public disinformation campaign. See, the people didn't know what marijuana was. The farmers knew what hemp was, but when they changed the name, and then Hearst is telling everybody, this dreaded new drug, the killer weed, assassin of youth, If one of your children smoke marijuana, they'll come home and they'll kill the family. You ever see anybody fight on marijuana? Anybody, I've seen a lot of people out there drunk, and yeah, they'll get in a fist fight pretty quick. I never seen anybody fight when they were smoking hemp. But again, like I said, this is not about the smoking side of things. So anyway, Hearst was spreading it was called yellow journalism. And believe me, it was yellow. And then it doesn't say here, but in 1916, a German, he invented the decorticator. And that was a machine that could process hemp. And take all the back-breaking labor because to take the fiber out for making clothes and that type of thing. Okay, you can go to the next one. Well, again, back to Pancho Villa and his first use of the word. Now, this gentleman comes into play. John D. Rockefeller. About 1906, Mr. Rockefeller and his rich friends got together, and they decided they would start medical foundations. So, they had the money to do whatever they wanted. So they went out and they started teaching people, when they opened these universities and things, they taught allopathic medicine. Medicine from chemicals. Well, chemicals don't heal you. But this is what they taught because Mr. Rockefeller, his friends owned the chemical companies. And so they had a vested interest in pushing their products. Now, empiric medicine from plants, was very popular at that time. But they just pushed the empiric medicine aside, outlawed it, and went ahead with the allopathic medicine. So people like Mr. Rockefeller, they're the ones that are largely responsible for the medical system we have today. But old John D. himself, he lived to be 98 years old. Guess what medicine he used? It wasn't allopathic. Okay. 1916 to 1935, the Hearst newspapers initiate and build a campaign to outlaw marijuana. Reporting is slanted to generate reader bias. For example, the reader was never told that hemp and marijuana are exactly the same plant. Nor was the reader told that the active ingredients of the tonic they gave their baby to ease colic came from marijuana or the hemp plant. Nor that the smoke they inhaled in their ever-popular hashish parlors was a derivative of marijuana. Furthermore, news stories are manipulated to aggrandize and exaggerate the supported horrors of recreational marijuana use. Now that was if you look into history, back in the early part of the 1900s, in New York City alone, there was 500 hash parlors where people could openly go in, smoke hash. Well, hash is made from the same material, the resin of the plant. It's the same material that I make the medicine from. So it was widely accepted at that time. Okay, 1930, U.S. government sponsors the Siller Commission. Study on the effects of off-duty smoking of marijuana, hemp buds and leaves by American servicemen in Panama. The report concludes that such recreational smoking is not a problem and recommends that no criminal penalties apply to its use. During the same time, Louis Armstrong was arrested and jailed for 10 days for smoking marijuana cigarettes. There's that smoke. But it was very much a racial thing that they did. They used people like Louis Armstrong so badly. I mean, he was a wonderful musician, but when they played that racist card, they generated the hate they were looking for. Okay, can we go to the next one? All right. 1931, Andrew Mellon and the powerful Mellon Bank of Pittsburgh, financier of the many DuPont projects and longtime supporter of Hearst, serving as President Hoover's Secretary of the Treasury, appoints his future nephew-in-law, Harry J. Anslinger, to be the head of the newly reorganized Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Anslinger begins to compile a dossier of tabloid articles which sensationalize first day of my new lips, disinformation about marijuana use. And the crimes committed while supposedly under the influence of the herb. This collection of newspaper clippings, most from Hearst newspapers, becomes known as the Gore Files. 1937, Walter Treadway, Assistant U.S. Surgeon General, tells the Cannabis Advisory Subcommittee of the League of Nations that extended use of cannabis derivatives is benign. In other words, harmless, both socially and economically, and is no more habit-forming than sugar or coffee. I like this illustration. You know, good plant, bad plant. I think they got that mixed up. And there's the wonder of reefer madness. There it is before your eyes. You know, they made these, well actually there was a lot of sensationalist writing done on this subject. Right in Canada alone, there was a woman called Emily F. Murphy. And she wrote, she was a judge. And she wrote a series of articles for Maclean's magazine about marijuana. I don't think the woman had ever been within 1,000 miles of a marijuana plant, because again, it was just more of a sensationalist, racist. If a black man smokes marijuana, then he'll rape a white woman, that type of thing. So, and then she produced a book called The Black Candle. It was more of the same nonsense. And then in 1923, the Canadian government makes Indian hemp illegal. In the year 1900, 2/3 of the medicine made worldwide was coming from that plant. 23 years later, the Canadian government outlawed medicinal use. And then in 1930s, 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act. Well, essentially that took it off the farmers couldn't grow it anymore. There was just too many difficulties, and you couldn't get they wanted the hemp plant gone. And they did a great job of erasing it. Here's a very friendly man. He's got a sledgehammer in his hand. Henry Ford, he was interested in running cars on alcohol. And he was also very interested in hemp fiber. So he built a car out of hemp. It was 2/3 the weight of steel and 10 times stronger. And there's some very famous footage. This isn't in the winter here, but there's some very famous footage of him doing the same thing in the wintertime. He has his sledgehammer and he's hitting the back of his car. He can't even put a dent in it. So why aren't we driving hemp cars? Or why don't we have hemp boats, hemp airplanes? 2/3 the weight of steel, 10 times stronger. To me, it just makes sense. But anyway, that got crushed. Did I get that? Okay, 1942, the U.S. government overrides its own ban on hemp and distributes 400,000 pounds of hemp seed to U.S. farmers who produce 42,000 tons of hemp fiber annually to support the war effort until 1946. U.S. farmers, including youthful 4-H club members, are inundated by Uncle Sam with incentives to grow hemp. The USDA makes it mandatory for farmers to attend showings of its Hemp for Victory film. Farmers and their sons who agree to grow hemp are exempt from military service, even though America is at war. Well, see, what happened, they outlawed the hemp in the States. They outlawed people growing it because they were getting their hemp supply from the Philippines. And when the Japanese when they invaded the Philippines, that cut off the hemp supply. So then the American government had to turn around and produce this film, Hemp for Victory, and it was okay to grow hemp again, as long as it's for the war effort. And this gentleman here, Mr. LaGuardia, he was the mayor of New York. And as I said, in New York there used to be 500 hash parlors. So they knew there was no harm. So the LaGuardia report, marijuana report, compiled between 1938 and 1944 by the New York Academy of Medicine at the request of Mayor Theodore LaGuardia, is released to refute Anslinger's negative claims about marijuana. It reports that marijuana use has caused no violence at all and cites numerous instances of beneficial effects. 1950s and 1960s. I should mention first, okay, well, we'll read this first. The U.S. Army sponsors numerous tests to determine the effects of cannabis smoking on soldiers. The first study showed no loss of motivation or performance after 2 years of continual heavy smoking. The study is replicated 6 more times by the U.S. military and dozens of times by independent universities, always with the same basic findings. Now, Anslinger, he kept busy. First, he outlawed hemp because it was so dangerous and it caused so much violence. Then he changed his tune in the early 1950s, and he said it makes people into pacifists. That's a kind of a radical shift. But Anslinger went to the United Nations in 1954, and he had the United Nations agree that cannabis was a non-medicinal plant. And then in 1961, with the Single Convention Treaty, any country that wanted to be part of the UN, any signatory country, they had to deny the use of cannabis to their people. So believe me, it was a fix. And this gentleman right here, John Kennedy. In 1962, credible sources report that President Kennedy routinely uses marijuana to relieve his back pain and plans to have the drug legalized. Maybe that was another reason they killed him. Now we get into the flower children and hippies. I was never one of them. I always had short hair. I was just, I never had long hair, and I didn't take part in any of this. But when they all started, when the young people started using hemp quite widely in North America at that time, I think it really started to get the young people thinking about what was wrong with this world. And one big thing that was wrong, of course, was that right there, the Vietnam War. It took many years, I think it was 1974, before it was finally brought to an end, but the peace protests and everything in the States, I think, had a lot to do with it. 1966 to 1976, millions of Americans illegally used marijuana daily, and new federal research conducted by independent university scholars indicates a wide array of beneficial effects, or beneficial uses. Numerous and sometimes weekly reports in medical journals tell of the positive therapeutic benefits of using cannabis for treating epilepsy, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, multiple dystrophy, and tumors, asthma, glaucoma, and nausea. Notice they say tumors. Even before the Virginia study, they knew. These studies conclude that crude natural cannabis is the best and safest medicine of choice for many serious health problems. 1975, researchers at the Medical School of Virginia discovered that cannabis is incredibly successful for reducing the size of many types of tumors, both benign and cancerous. The study goes on to identify numerous positive effects, which include lively, merry, more responsible attitudes, a general sense of well-being, and healthy self-esteem, and a greater work motivation. They always like to tell us that, if your kids smoke cannabis, or they'll go into your basement and they'll live there forever. They'll never go find a job because they're just potheads. Well, that's nonsense. I've known people that have smoked marijuana for 40 years. They're some of the most productive people in our society. So, another bald-faced line. There's George. Another hero. Big man in the drug industry. 1977, George Bush leaves his post as director of the CIA, and is appointed as the director of Eli Lilly by Dan Quayle's father and family, who along with Bush are major shareholders in Eli Lilly. 1982, Omni Magazine and other sources report that Eli Lilly, Abbott Labs, Pfizer, Smith & Kline, and French, and other drug companies would lose hundreds of millions to billions of dollars annually if marijuana were legal in the U.S. I love this one. Keep marijuana away from your children. It will harm them. They'll become schizophrenics. This lady did a study in the 1980s, and what she found, she's a doctor, not only a director, that the healthiest babies born on this planet are born to hemp-using mothers who live in Jamaica. That's what the study proved. The babies were the most developmentally ahead of other children whose mothers didn't use hemp. And the study was followed up. It's all the truth. And you can't deny what's obvious. If smoking marijuana or eating hemp cookies or whatever, if that doesn't harm a baby that's in the developmental stages in the womb, well, what harm would it be to give it to your child? Today they have these diseases, well, made-up diseases, attention deficit disorder. Then they put your child on amphetamines, like Ritalin. That's okay. Have a nice pill. Well, what would be wrong with a 10-year-old taking a little bit of oil? I'm not talking about getting the kiddies high, but a little bit of oil, it would, and there's no need for them to, these chemicals are dangerous. They don't know what long-term effect that's going to have. So, I think this woman did a very important piece of work, and although, again, her study has more or less always been hidden, but if you look it up, you'll find it, and it's exactly the way I said it is. So women smoke a little marijuana. Big deal. Let women enjoy their pregnancies. I think these hyperbolic warnings about marijuana and pregnancy have made women absolutely nuts. I agree. 1987, 15th edition of American Manual of Diagnosis and Therapy, the U.S. military's official field manual, says about cannabis in part. Chronic or periodic use of cannabis produces no physical dependence or social dysfunction. There is little evidence of biologic damage even among relatively heavy users. The chief opposition to the drug rests on a moral and political foundation. In 1988, the DEA's administrative law judge, Francis Young, takes medical testimony for 15 days and reviews hundreds of documents to conclude that marijuana is one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man. Now, this is the Drug Enforcement Administration's own judge. Did they take his advice? They're still out there kicking people's doors in. Now, this is Dr. David Suzuki. This is the man that I told you about that put out the nature of things in Canada. And he was the first one I contacted. You see, at that time, I didn't understand what was taking place, but in 1997, the Canadian government made hemp a Schedule II drug. So it could, again, be used in medicine. So when they did that, what they were doing was they're opening the door for the pharmaceutical companies to legally use it. They didn't want us to have it, but they, just slowly adjust the public to this way of thinking. And that's what they were doing. And when I come along with this information, I guess I kind of threw a monkey wrench right into the spokes, because we showed everybody how to produce it themselves. But they were getting ready to bring this out. Actually, they're still working on it. There's a researcher in Spain, I believe, that's supposed to be working with cannabis, and what he wants to do, he wants to take the high-grade oils, or the cannabinoids, and mix them with the chemo. We'll take something that can cure you and mix it with the poison. That way we can squeeze more money out of your pockets. That's what it's about. So this is the situation we're in at the present time. And it's not a good situation. We cannot let this fall back into the hands of the drug companies. These people have held this medicine's use back. And, well, like I said, in the 70s, around 1975, 76, Gerald Ford, who was then President of the United States, he gave full right to the research back to the drug companies. And of course, their dream was to actually produce these synthetic THC and other cannabinoids and take the high of it. Well, where's the danger in getting high? I mean, look what the drug industry gives us. And look at the opiates. OxyContin. 80% of the deaths that occur today from street use of they're dying from pharmaceuticals. Over 80% of people. But they're not concerned about the high you get from that stuff. But the high you get from marijuana, it's harmless. If you take too much marijuana, even with oil, if you take too much, the effect wears off in an hour, 2 hours. You're back to normal. You're not harmed. If you take, even simple drugs like aspirin. I mean, thousands of people are dying every year from aspirin. Nobody's dying from him. So, the whole thing's a fraud. Now we're getting... One second, need another drink. Lucky I'm not an opera singer. Because then the tomatoes would be flying. Where are we at here? All right, let's get into what the oil can treat. You ready for the projector? I'm coming back with this one ain't no limit. We don't get the. Oh yeah, this is quite long here. You want? Okay, I think we're going to take about a 5-minute or 10-minute break, and then we'll be right back. Is it okay, folks? Okay. Great. We've already gone.
Ili na stranici spirit-ri.hr, znači spirit rijeka Hrvatska, spirit-ri.hr. Evo, prepuštam Riku, nastavite.
Okay, yep. All right, folks, we're back. Now, I want to get into some of the different diseases and things that this wonderful medicine can treat. All right, let's start with arthritis. Now, there's many different forms of arthritis, but one of the worst forms is rheumatoid arthritis. And we had a lady in England here about 3-4 years ago. She contacted us, and she had made the oil, and she had rheumatoid arthritis for 11 years. In 9 weeks, she was cured. So there's no need for anyone to be suffering from arthritis. And that's another problem. As we age, in the society we live in today, by the time you're 50 years old, you're pretty well burned out. Like either arthritis is setting in, or diabetes, or cancer. And really, if you're lucky enough to hit 50 and stay healthy, about all you have to look forward to is suffering. They say, your golden years, enjoy your old age. Well, how do you do that when you're suffering? But if we could simply start using this medicine in the proper way, we can end that suffering. And people will live a great deal longer. This medicine promotes life. And I honestly think today, if you took a child and you gave them tiny doses of that oil every day, I wouldn't be a bit surprised that child could live to be 200, maybe 300 years old. In good health. So isn't that what we all want for ourselves and our children? Of course it is. All right. Now we get that ancient one, diabetes. That's a nasty one. I've seen so many people, have to get limbs cut off. They get diabetic ulcers that won't heal. The medical system can't heal them. But if you take this wonderful oil and apply it, then you can take diabetic ulcers and it will heal them, even topically. You don't have to even ingest the oil. Just put the oil on the diabetic ulcer and it will heal it. So it's the ultimate answer. And with diabetes, I've had reports, I've seen people back home that I knew, I knew socially, or I've known for years, that were diabetics. They got on the oil, and it did cure their diabetes. They don't even need to take the oil now in a lot of cases. But I've had reports, you see, you have type 1 diabetes and you have type 2. Well, one of them you're born with, the other one you develop the diabetes. But we've had reports from people, that had both types. And they said it cured them. And I really don't have a hard time believing it at all, because it rejuvenates vital organs. This is a type of damage. Now there's a prime example. There's a diabetic ulcer. Now, how would you like to have that on your leg? And go to a medical system that can't heal it? And what happens? After a while, it gets infected, gangrene sets in, and then the medical system gets their hacksaw out. Goodbye leg. And then they just keep cutting pieces off you until you finally die. So, there's no need for any of this to be happening. And even people, I do know of a couple of patients that took it for diabetes, that they still take insulin, but they take very little insulin. It lowered their insulin intake way, way down. And it promotes good circulation and that type of thing. So, if you're diabetic, there's no better medicine. All right. Skin cancers. You just had that up there. I'm going to get my stick up again. Feel important when I have that. Now these are some ugly little critters. Bowman's disease. I've treated all of these. And, skin cancers, there's nothing to them. Anybody can cure skin cancer. Like I said, just take the oil, put the oil right on the cancer, apply a bandage, then every 3 days change the bandage, apply new oil, and most cases, 2-3 weeks, sometimes less, skin cancer's gone. But what I tell people to do is treat it, the same with mine, I've seen other people that use, many other people that use it for skin cancer. But the best thing to do is treat it until there's nothing but pink skin. And then continue to treat the same area, just as if it had cancer, like it had never gone away. Treat it for 2 more weeks. And if there's any residual cancer cells there, it'll kill them all. Now, I've had hundreds of people with skin cancers. If they took my advice and did that little extra treatment, none of them have ever returned. Not one. So it's the ultimate answer. And skin cancer, well, countries like Australia are just full of skin cancer. And look at some of these treatments. The creams, chemotherapy. Take a look at these people. Look what it does to them. It burns you. It's poison. To me, nothing about chemotherapy is rational. Okay. Internal cancers. Yeah. Now, this is lymphoma. But when we get into internal cancers, now, the average person, if you're diagnosed with a serious cancer, say stomach cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, bowel cancer, whatever, if you have not taken any chemo or radiation, then usually the 60-gram treatment over a 3-month period will cure you. But if you've had damage from chemo and radiation, I suggest that you take even more oil to undo that damage. But once your cancer is cured, then basically all you have to do is, what I suggest that people drop it back to taking about 1 gram a month or 1 milliliter a month. Just a few drops a week. And there's so many of these things that they do today. Can I get that picture of lymphoma back? Oh, yeah, good. This reminds me of a gentleman that came to me in Canada. He had a neck similar, something like this, right here, big tumor. And he had 2 tumors right here on his stomach, the upper part of his stomach. So he came and he got the treatment from me. And he said, and I told him how to take it, and he took it right. If you go to our website, the dosage instructions are all there. So he went home, and it was about 6 weeks later. I get this call from him, and he said, Rick, both the tumors in my stomach are gone. And he said, the one in my neck, he said, shrunk down to about 1/10 the size. He said, I'm going in 2 weeks to have a CAT scan. And I said, why? He said, well, how will I know if it's working? You know, that's the way people's heads work. You know, and the simple truth is, you don't need a machine to tell you how you feel. No one knows better than you do. You're the patient. What's a stupid machine going to tell you? I'll tell you what that machine will do. It'll give you a big dose of radiation, which in turn will cause cancer. So stay away from that type of thing. And the CAT scans, all of it. Okay. All right. Now we got multiple sclerosis. That's another horrible, debilitating disease. Yeah, we'll get there. There we are. And that's usually where they wind up, in a wheelchair. Now, multiple sclerosis, if you get it in the early stages, like people that have only had it for a few months, it's very easy to cure. I had a gentleman in Yarmouth, he came up, his 23-year-old son had multiple sclerosis, and he used to work on the fishing boats, and he got to the point, you know, they can't walk, so he could no longer work. And his father came up and he got the oil treatment from me. He called me up 6 weeks later. He said, my son's back to work on the fishing boats. So it is definitely curable, but when you take people that have had multiple sclerosis for years, they're taking chemicals and pills and God knows what, then, you know, there's no question the oil is going to help them. And it can bring a person right out of that wheelchair. But it's going to take much longer because they've had the disease is well established, so it's going to take more time to cure it. But when I tell people, just stay on the oil. And if we can, you know, if you have the right to grow it freely yourself, well, you're making the medicine for practically nothing. It's not going to break your bank account. So what have you got to lose? You know, why suffer? And I've seen people that, actually, I know a woman back in Canada. She's got multiple sclerosis. First time I met her, she had one of these. And she was hobbling around. Well, this was like 2004. And I told her, I said, what's wrong with you? I got multiple sclerosis. She said, I smoke 20 joints a day. I looked at her and I said, get on the oil. Now, I've met this woman several times. The last time I seen her, by that time, I had known her for about 5 years. She's still walking around with that cane. And she's still smoking 20 joints a day. She didn't take the oil. So, does a person like that even want to heal themselves? Or are they just looking for pity? I don't know what's going on. If I was offered a cure, I'd be taking the cure. You know, like I said, pot smoking does have limited benefits. But when it comes to diseases like that, you know, use the oil to cure it. Okay, depression. Well, I found both types of oil. Either oil made from sativas or oil made from indicas to solve depression problems. Because what it does, it levels you out. I mean, through life we always get these ups and downs. We all do. You know, it's just natural. And today, if somebody feels a little down, they go to the doctor, and of course he throws a bunch of pills at them. And usually that causes more problems than they originally had anyway. So when you're looking at things like that, the oil to me is the only way to go. It's so amazing when you see. Oh, can we get back to the other one for a second? Depression can be taken care of. Now, anxiety, that's another thing that happens when some people start taking the oil. Now, a lot of people don't have any problems, and many people have taken this treatment and told me that they never even got high on it because they followed my dosage instructions and built up their tolerance as time went on. But people, the main thing when you take this oil, what you have to realize is within an hour, it's going to be telling you to go lay down. And if you try to fight it, if you try to fight that sleepy effect, then some people get anxious. And I just tell people, I said, just do as the oil is telling you. Go with it. And actually once people get used to taking it, they enjoy taking it. Because of the wonderful sleep and the health effects they're getting. So that's the way to go with that. Insomnia, well, you can forget that word. If you got good oil, you'll never have insomnia again. This stuff will knock you down for 10 hours or 12 hours, whatever you want. And the amazing thing is when you get out of bed, you know, like the time I was about 45, I was getting about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. I'd get out of bed the next morning more tired than I was before I went to bed. As soon as I got on that oil, you know, 10 hours, 12 hours, solid rest. And all of a sudden I was bouncing out of bed. I felt like living again. So, it's the way to go. Paranoia, that's another thing. They say, well, marijuana causes paranoia. Not much wonder. It's against the law. That's the problem. If there was no damn law, there'd be very little paranoia. Now, this is another disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. People that have been to wars and seen horrible things. And, you know, I mean, this affects the way you think, and it affects the rest of your life. I've actually treated people that were in Hitler's death camps. And the benefits of this oil were just amazing, what it did for them. One gentleman, he had developed Alzheimer's, and he was in his 80s, and we put him on the oil. It cured his Alzheimer's. He came right back, and but later I found out from his daughter that he could never deal with what he had gone through. And after he got on the oil, all of a sudden he started opening up, and he learned to deal with it. And without something like the oil to help you, and some of the horrors we see on this planet today, believe me, this oil is a great benefit. So, okay, we'll go to the next one. Use the oil. Depression. Now, there's another disease, Parkinson's. I think the greatest sports legend in history, Muhammad Ali, he suffers from Parkinson's. Michael J. Fox, another one, Parkinson's. You know, why are these people suffering? You know, get on the oil, Muhammad. You know, we would like to keep you around. He was a great statesman, you know, for his race, and he was a great human being. So, you know, if we can cure these people, why not? And why suffer with diseases like this? They are curable. Oh yeah, severe burns. Well, I've already discussed to you what it can do for severe burns, what it did for my hand. But what you have to know, like this oil, if properly made, it's a natural antibiotic and it's a natural anesthetic. So if you put this on a severe burn, in just no time, the burn's gone. That burning sensation is gone. And then where you have the natural antibiotic on it already, what could be better? Your healing rate is accelerated. I mean, when you look at burn units today, you look at children, or anyone that's been in, say, a house fire, and they're burned over half their body or whatnot. Look what they got to look forward to. You know, they can die from infections. The doctors are going to be doing skin grafts. And in the end, I mean, I've seen people that had third-degree burns. And in the end, you can still tell, because they never get rid of all the scarring. Heal the burns with no scars. And with what I've seen with my own hand, if I could do that for my own hand, I mean, the hair follicles, everything grew back. That kind of tells me if you have bad burn to your face, or a severe burn to your face, you put that oil on, I think your face would regrow, the same as my hand did. No operation. So that's how you treat a burn. Alright. Unhealthy warts and moles. Well, they're treated the same as you do skin cancer. You're just putting the oil on the mole, and it treats all types of anything like that. Plantar's warts, genital warts. We've had people use it in everything you can imagine. But the treatment is the same. Just keep applying the oil every 3 days, and usually what happens, the wart just falls off. It's painless. So it's a very easy way to get rid of an unhealthy wart. Oh yeah. Now, another thing that many people have noticed with the use of this oil too, including myself, your eyesight gets better. It's wonderful for the treatment of glaucoma because it lowers the ocular pressure. But I've had dozens and dozens of people that have taken the oil. They call me and say, I can't see right under my glasses anymore. So they go into the optometrist, they check the eyes, and now their eyes are better. So they had to change the prescription to weaker glasses. But my own eyesight right now, I can see better right now. I'm 61 years old. I can see better right now than I could when I was 20. And the oil did that for me. So there's nothing better. Skin creams and salves. This is another thing. This is something that the ladies in the audience will love. Quite a few years ago, I'm out in Canada, we have this substance called Noxzema. It's about the same as Nivea. And so I took a big jar of Noxzema one day. I took a big jar of Noxzema, and I put about a half ounce of this high-grade oil in with the Noxzema, mixed it in, and it turned the Noxzema from white to yellow. So I decided, because you can use this like to cure athlete's foot or anything like that. It's very beneficial. But this night I was sitting there and I thought, what would happen if I gave myself a facial? I'd never done that. So I went down to the bathroom, I washed my face very well, and I took a big gob of this like that, and I rubbed it like this. It took me 20 minutes or half an hour to rub it in. And then I went to bed. So I go to bed and get up the next morning, and I walked in and I washed my face good, and my face felt just like it was a baby's ass. It was so smooth. But, me being a man, I just went, well, that's nice. I didn't think anything about it. So I went over to my neighbor's house. And I used to go over almost every morning for coffee. And I was sitting there having a coffee with Larry. And his wife, Ruby, she kept looking at me. And I thought she was acting kind of strange. And after about an hour, she walked over to me and she said, Rick, did you have a facelift? So I told her what I'd done, and we all got a big laugh at it. But it does wonderful things. For anybody concerned about their complexions, scar tissue, bad complexions, anything like that, it'll just work miracles. So, another anti-aging thing. All right. Well, there seems to be no limits to what this oil can effectively treat. It will even stop a toothache. And I've seen that too. If you take the oil, if you have a bad toothache, if you got good oil, you put it on, it'll stop the toothache. So, what I would like to, I hope I live to see the day that everyone has a big jar of this in their own home. Of course, there wouldn't be a lot of work for doctors then, because you'd be treating yourself at home. But we all deserve the right to have this at our disposal in case we're injured or we're in need of it. There's no harm, there's no danger, and in reality, with this medicine, you determine your own rate of dosage. You determine how long you take that dosage. No doctor required. So that's another reason they stand against it. All right, now I'd like to compare the use of the oil to the medications doctors prescribe to us today. All right. Treatments. Well, that's okay. Let's just one of the treatments. Let's go to the next slide. All right, here we go. Treatment side effects. Chemotherapy, weakness and fatigue, nausea and vomiting, hair loss. The impact. It has an impact on your bone marrow. Problems, blood coagulation, diarrhea, immune system loss, infertility, secondary tumors. Would you like to take that stuff? I would. Look at the headline. No side effects. No comparison. You can't really compare this type of medicine to what we recognize from the medical system. Everything they give us causes harm. Okay, next slide. All other sorts, okay, chemoradiation side effects, yes. This is another thing I've seen a lot of. Well, that's what chemo does to your hand if you spill it on your hand. So when you see that type of damage, done to the exterior of your body, can you imagine the damage that's being done to the interior? You know, it's horrific. To me, chemo and radiation are both insane. Now this lady here, there's what you look like after you've had radiation, when you've had big radiation treatment. But another amazing fact with this medicine. I've had people come to me that were badly burned by radiation, burned right from the chest right through to the back. They take the treatment within 90 days. You'd never know they had radiation. All that burning, all that red is gone. So there's no better substance for fighting radiation damage. And nobody should take radiation in the first place. You want radiation, move to Japan. Okay, next. Blood sugar. Yeah, well, there's your insulin. Keeps the blood sugar in level. Side effects, low blood sugar if too much, high blood sugar if too low, weight gain, skin reactions. Again, why would anyone take insulin when they can take a natural substance? It doesn't cause any of this. Oh yeah, athlete's foot and infections. Actually, that tongue looks like it looked like cancer, but it is an infection. And I mean, I've seen people like this. I've seen athlete's foot, severe athlete's foot, but usually when you see this type of thing, it's usually on somebody that has psoriasis. And I've seen people who their entire bodies were covered. I had one guy, he was so bad he couldn't even walk. His entire body. And these people live with this illness for decades. I had a man who came to me in Canada, he had a bad neck. He had a lot of pain. So I put him on the oil, and I noticed that he had bad psoriasis. And I told him, I said, when you start taking the oil, I said, it'll help treat the psoriasis. And I said, I'll make a little bottle of tincture up that you can treat it externally. So about 3 weeks later, this guy comes back to my house, and he was a man in his late 50s. And he came in and he was mad. I want you to know, he was talking about going and killing his doctor. In a way, I didn't blame him. But he opened his shirt and he showed me, and almost all gone. And he told me, he said, Rick, he said, I got this disease when I was 16. He said, it ruined my life. I was always self-conscious. You know, and he said, you come along and show me this medicine? He said, it cures it. You know, he had taken cold tire treatments. They have all these crazy treatments they give people with this illness. None of them work. This one does. All right. The treatment of athlete's foot. Well, athlete's foot is not always effective. Well, actually, people that I knew that had athlete's foot, they couldn't cure it. They used things like tenactin and all these different stuff that the pharmaceutical industry has, but it might take it away for a few days, but then it returns. When you use the oil, it takes it away, and it stays away. Now, I was going to say the side effects. And swelling, inflammation. Side effects, if you're taking this type of thing for inflammation, serious side effects, so you will need frequent blood tests when taking them. Well, you don't need frequent blood tests when you're taking the oil. And the oil is the greatest anti-inflammatory in the world. There's nothing that even begins to compare. I mean, how is it curing the arthritis if it's not an inflammatory? So it's a great treatment. But the pills, they tie your stomach in knots. You get constipated. You get all of these problems with these pills. So again, stay away from the pills. What's that one you just had there? Burns when we go over that, blood pressure. This is another thing that's very important. When people begin taking this medicine, they have to be aware that it lowers your blood pressure. Now, if you're already taking a blood pressure medication, then in most cases people don't need their pharmaceutical blood pressure medication anymore. The oil brings their blood pressure down. And usually they'll have in the beginning, their heart rate may increase slightly. But even that after a week or two, usually that settles down. So, no problem. Hemorrhoids, that's another thing none of us really want to talk about, but a lot of us have them. And this oil is just magnificent. A little bit of oil on the finger, and the problem goes away. It's glaucoma, like I said, it lowers ocular pressure. There's no better treatment for glaucoma. Migraines, it's been recognized forever as a great treatment for migraines. And, of course, warts and moles. Well, we already know how to deal with that. Hemorrhoids, okay, are usually benign but hard to cure. Regulation of blood pressure with constant drug use. Side effects: skin scars from burns, serious allergic reaction including rash, itching, swelling, especially of the face, tongue, throat, severe dizziness, trouble breathing. Yeah, I don't think I want that stuff. I'll stick with the oil. Yeah, there's psoriasis, and this is the type of thing I've seen. Can you imagine, getting up in the morning, looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing that? But again, it's treatable, it's curable. So there's no need for any of this suffering to be going on. Okay. FDA issues warning label against Activa psoriasis drug. Well, this is some of the wonderful stuff they use. Side effects: life-threatening. That's a good one. Infections, bacterial sepsis, which is also nasty, viral meningitis, invasive fungal disease, progressive multifocal, leukemia. I don't know if I can pronounce that. I can say leukemia, but that's flu. I'll leave that word for you people. I can't say it. But still, the oil is the treatment you need. Okay. Effects, this is for, patients lose the ability to walk prior to death. 90% are still capable of independent walking at 10 years from onset. This must be multiple sclerosis. Yeah, okay. So, your multiple sclerosis treatments: high blood sugar levels, weight gain, bloating, acne, changes in mood, thinning of the skin and bones. Again, all unnecessary. Use the oil. Now, AIDS. If you go up on the internet and punch in Sean, there's a fellow up there that has AIDS. He's had it for 20 years. He's been on the oil now for quite a while, and he's had magnificent results. And he was taking 36 pills a day when he started the oil, and he was looking for a walker. He was getting that bad. Yeah, he was a dying man. But within, he got on that oil, within a month he was jogging. All right, no side effects. Even with anti-retroviral treatment, over the long term, HIV-infected patients may experience neurocognitive disorders, osteoporosis, neuropathy, cancers, neuropathy, and cardiovascular disease. There's so many of these drugs that actually cause other illnesses. Now, often I bumped into people that said, okay, my doctor put me on a medication, now I've got diabetes. The diabetes was brought on by the medication. Okay. Now, this is a nasty one, too, Crohn's disease. This is another one of these diseases that we never heard of years ago. Nobody had Crohn's. There's a real epidemic of it now. And, I've seen people with Crohn's that, they've been suffering for years. And the medical system keeps doing operations, and it doesn't help. And, but the oil cures Crohn's in no time. All right, and there's your results for your side effects for the medications. Some drugs have serious side effects. You'll need to weigh the benefits and risks of any treatment. Well, I don't have to weigh the benefits and risks. I know which one to take. It's the one on the end. Okay. Vital organs. Now, this is another thing we've seen with this oil. It rejuvenates vital organs. We've had people that had very poor kidney function. They had operations, and every time you have a serious operation, your kidney function goes down. Get on the oil, no time. Kidney function right back to normal. It rejuvenates livers, lungs. I've even had people, I had a lot of people that came to me that were taking 20, 30 pills a day. And they get on that oil, And within a month, the only thing they're using is the oil. And, you know, and I'm not a doctor, and I don't have the right to tell people what to take and what not to take. But some of these people actually went off their heart medications. And it didn't do them any harm. So the oil did its job in all respects. But there's nothing better for rejuvenating your body, both internally and externally. All right. Well, we've been through this one. This sounds like fun. Side effects, treatments, headache, nausea, sleepiness, drowsiness, agitation, sexual problems. I've always had that. Dry mouth, constipation, bladder problems, blurred vision, changes in weight, stomach pain, vomiting, loss of appetite, skin rashes, tremors, restlessness, rapid heartbeat, dizziness, sensitivity to the sun. With the side effects these medications give people, why does anybody take them? You know, I know some countries they don't give you the readouts, but I know, like in Canada now, they have to give you a list of side effects. If you're getting a prescription and you ask for it, they have to give it to you. And I know many people that have gone in for prescriptions, and once they read the side effects, they decided they were better off without it. So, you know, who wants to put their life in danger over that? Now this is a strange one, schizophrenia. They've always told us right along that you have to keep your children away, you know, from anything to do with marijuana because it causes schizophrenia. Back over 20 years ago, a young man I knew, very intelligent man. He just finished teacher's college. By the time he finished teacher's college, he was diagnosed as a full-blown schizophrenic. And I watched the effect those chemicals they were giving him. I watched the effect it had on him. It was horrifying. You know, I mean, his mental alertness, and he couldn't, he thought he was God, and he was seeing missiles coming at him. It was just crazy the way he talked. But one day he came to my house, and he pulled a joint out of his pocket, and he lit the joint, and he smoked about half it. And he started talking to me about motorcycle trips and things we had taken in the past. He was right back to normal. So I called his mother and told her what I'd seen. And she told me, well, keep him away from marijuana. I said, I think it was the marijuana that brought him back to normal. But, of course, she wouldn't listen to what I was saying. And at the time, I mean, I'm no doctor, and I just thought, you know, it couldn't be the hemp. But years later, when I was producing the oil in Canada, a lot of the local growers, they used to come, and some of the growers were giving oil away too. Some of them were selling it too, you know, like for a price, but a lot of them were giving it away. And I had a grower come to me one day, and we made the oil for him, but he didn't say anything about a medical condition. So about 3 months later, I was in the parking lot in Amherst, and he walked up to me. And he said, Rick, he said, that medicine really works. I looked at him and I said, when you were at my house, I said, you didn't say anything about a medical condition. And I said, you know, what's the situation with you? And he said, I'm bipolar, borderline schizophrenic. And the minute he said it, I thought back to that young man from years before. And unfortunately, that young man died at 32 years old from the effects of the drugs they had given him. But I asked this fellow when he walked up to me, I said, what did you do? He said, Rick, today I got the oil from you. He said, I'm home. He said, I took all those damn chemicals, and he said, I threw them in the trash. I went on the oil. He said, I'm back to work, and I'm feeling great. So, I'm not saying it can cure everybody that has schizophrenia, but it can do a great deal for a very large number of them. So, even if you're a schizophrenic, there is hope. Oh, yeah, the treatments. I'll tell you right now, the treatments they give you, they make you feel like you're dead inside. You know, these people, these treatments they give for schizophrenia is horrible. Drowsiness, dizziness, changing positions, vision, rapid heartbeat, sensitivity to the sun, skin rashes, menstrual problems for women, rigidity, persistent muscle spasms, tremors, restlessness, body weight. We don't need any of it. The oil, again, is the best you can get. All other sorts of mental health diseases, side effects. Yes, you should go to these websites. This website right here. And if you want to see side effects, that's the one we'll tell you. And then you got all the mental health diseases, because they come up with a new one every day. Makes money that way. We invent a new disease, we give you a pill for it. And Psychiatry, if you look at a documentary out there on the internet called The Marketing of Madness, well, you'll find out where the madness is, and it's in psychiatry. And these pills they're giving us, they're no good. They don't help us. And the simple reality is, doctors don't know. Take any one of us here, or any one of you here. If you and I are both on the same medication, do you think the doctor knows what effect that's going to have on you or me? Of course not. Because there's no two of us the same. Our chemistry of our bodies are all different. We all have different tolerances, but the doctors treat us like we're all the same. Doesn't make any sense. And this little angel here, this is Shauna Banda. She was a young woman, 33-year-old mother, dying from Crohn's. And following Shauna, there will be another little clip, Dave Triplett. Dave had used it. He had a nasty case of cancer on his nose, and he used the oil to treat that. So we'd like to play these for you so you can see them for yourself. And these people have no reason to lie.
Hi, my name is Shauna Banda, and I've gone through a pretty serious disease and have recovered. And through that process, I'm coming to you today to try to explain that and get the word out a little better. I had a terminal case of Crohn's disease for 8 years. Towards the end of my disease, I was bedridden and was walking with a cane for help because of the arthritis. And I had watched this great movie back in '07 of Run from the Cure by Rick Simpson. And I'm sitting in Kansas and I watched the movie and I cried because he says you need a whole pound of this medication to make this 2 ounces of oil that you need to cure yourself. And at that point I watched the movie and was thinking, at this point I'm smoking this and it's the only thing that helps with the nausea and the pain. And just knew that I wanted to try this. And a couple years go by and I just keep getting worse and worse, and you get to that point where they say there's nothing more that we can do for you, and you just kind of go to die. I had blown my lungs, and twice in the same, within a month. And my husband went out and got online and got me the cheapest vaporizer that you could find. It was a glass dome vaporizer from in the 70s, and brought it home and we tried it out, and I didn't get any relief from vaporizing, and I put it away. I was very angry with him for giving me such a cheap machine. Reading a book in my bed, and I've pinched off that hose and dreading, not wanting to even take a drag out of this vaporizer. But I just forgot about it as I'm reading, and my husband walks in and he goes, "Is that the same oil as in the movie?" And I looked down and there's this beautiful red film of oil in the glass. And so I don't know. And he went out and got a spatula and we started scraping this bowl. And you only get just a little tiny bit on the spatula. And got some gel caps and started scooping up into that and started making a daily regimen. And I made this machine a little cabinet in my kitchen. And, before meals, it takes about an hour to make each pill. At this point, I've taken out the hose and taped it off and sealed it shut. And I just put the medicine in there and wait, 20 or so minutes, and it fills up with vapor, and then another 20 or so minutes later, all the vapor disappears and it's all stuck to the glass. So, before each meal, I could pull this thing out of my cabinet from my kitchen and make pills. By the time we're done cooking and eating, it's ready to go. So I did this 3 times a day, and within weeks I was completely changed. Within days I was changed so much that I had to start writing a journal. And this journal, halfway through writing it, I realized that this is such important information that we have to get this out there. We have to tell the world about this. I had to put all this information in a book to help any of you who may be watching this to see that I'm not in my deathbed. I'm working for the first time in 4 years. I've not been able to work. I'm hiking, I'm swimming, I'm able to play with my kids, I'm able to do things. I'm so busy now, it's not even funny, but I love it. It's great. With Crohn's disease, it's like having a stomach flu that won't go away, and my body is recognizing that something's wrong, so it's attacking itself, so it's in overdrive, and causing, this autoimmune deficiency. Well, now we've seen that it'll fix that. 15 surgeries, and I've had every organ taken out of my body that you can have taken out and still survive. This stuff is amazing. It's miraculous. I'll show you. I have to show everyone. I've got to show you my stomach. Most people are just amazed. And then here that is. So that's the second little scar I've got from, 2 different abdominal surgeries this way. I've got 2 C-section scars down here and multiple little scars all over. So, anyhow, there's your proof. I'm your proof. If that's what you're looking for is proof. When you decide to take your life into your own hands and realize that you can do this with a $50 machine, a $5 spatula, and a plant that you can grow for free in your backyard, you can do this. And it's awesome.
This is cancer. This is cannabis oil. This is cancer on cannabis oil. Any questions?
I'd have questions too if I was you. So here's my story. My name's Dave Triplett, and I cured my skin cancer using cannabis oil.
Several years ago, I had 2 lesions removed from the tip of my nose. In 2009, the lesions began to return in several places. I went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me a prescription for a cream. He told me to put the cream on my entire face and neck. He also told me to wait until after the holidays to use it because it may cause some redness. I did a Google search for the cream and I realized it was chemotherapy. I did a Google search for the cream and I realized it was chemotherapy. Next, I found some photojournals of people who have used the cream. The photos, as you can see, are quite alarming. After seeing the results of what the chemotherapy cream can do, I decided to look into alternatives. Recently, my friend Jennifer had sent me a video about Rick Simpson curing cancer with hemp oil. It was called Run From the Cure. So I decided to start there. After I watched Run From the Cure, I began to do some searches. I was really surprised at how much information was available. These are a few of the videos I found. Here are the pictures of my nose being filled with cannabis extract, or hash oil. As you saw, the cancer was pulled to the surface and healed. Pretty dramatic. In this side view, you can clearly see the cancer being pulled to the surface and healed. The greenish-brown stuff you see is the oil. Here's a few examples of anti-cannabis medications. This is a homeopathic cannabis sativa bottle. These are some cannabis indica tablets. This is a cannabis indica hot syrup. This is a bottle of cannabis pills. This is a bottle of cannabis extract. This is another bottle of cannabis extract. This is Dr. James Cannabis Indica Extract. This is a pouring cure. It's one of the ingredients for cannabis indica. This medicine was taken away from us, and now people are needing to see doctors. It's absolutely ridiculous as far as medication isn't available for cancer patients. We ask you to please do everything within your power to get the word out that cannabis, without a doubt, cures cancer. The National Cancer Institute, the American Cancer Society, and members of our government have known since 1975 that cannabis cures cancer.
1974, the Heath Tulin study. Ronald Reagan announces, the most reliable scientific sources say permanent brain damage is one of the inevitable results of the use of marijuana. Monkeys pumped full of marijuana, apparently 30 joints a day, had begun to atrophy and die after 90 days. Brain damage was determined after counting the dead brain cells of both monkeys who had been subjected to the marijuana and ones who had not. This study became the foundation of the government, and other special interest groups claim that marijuana kills brain cells. Here's what they didn't tell you. After 6 years of requests, how the study was conducted was finally revealed. Instead of administering 30 joints a day for 1 year, Dr. Heath used a method of pumping 63 Colombian-strength joints through a gas mask within 5 minutes over 3 months.
They suffocated the monkeys. What they did is they put these gas masks basically on their face and they pump hot into it, but without additional oxygen. So after X amount of time, the brain shut down. Well, if you suffocate, the first thing that's going to happen is your brain cell's going to die with lack of oxygen. So what they did is they suffocated the monkey, showed all these dead brain cells, and then went on to associate it by saying that cannabis use causes your brain cells to die. And how many people, not knowing the origin of the study, have gone on to call it unreported. And now people believe it.
Studies since have shown no signs of any brain cell damage. In 2005, new research suggested that marijuana could possibly stimulate brain cell growth. That study hasn't received the same attention. Another common belief, marijuana causes lung cancer.
In the 1999 study by the Institute of Medicine that was paid for by the United States government, they had used words like may and should cause cancer.
We've been hearing for years them trying to say that it causes lung cancer, and we say, really, that's interesting because you can't even show us one case of cancer being caused by cannabis use in the last month. Verifying that cannabis smoke does not cause cancer. It's different in nicotine. And the elements in the tobacco smoke do cause cancer. And elements in the marijuana.
Discovered that despite my training in medicine and science, I had been brainwashed with this substance, marijuana, that in fact it's remarkably non-toxic. There's never been a death from it. And I went from there, and that started me on a long interest in researching this substance.
Brown University study found long-term pot users are 62% less likely to develop head and neck cancers. This includes cancers of the mouth, tongue, nose, sinus, throat, and lymph nodes.
Breast cancer, prostate cancer, pheochromocytoma, lymphoma, leukemia, skin cancer, a whole variety of cancers that in experimental situations, meaning in tissue culture or in animal models, you can in fact show that cannabinoids kill these cancers.
Am I back? Yeah, okay. I should mention that there are really several testimonials up on the internet. If you go up on YouTube and look into vitamin cannabis, Cancergate, there's all kinds of little clips up there about people that have used it for burns and all kinds of things. So the proof is just building and building and building. But what I'd like to explain to everyone here, I don't care if you have cancer or what disease you have. If you have no disease, it doesn't matter. I mean, as we age, we do develop problems. So I suggest that everyone should take a full 60-gram treatment, just as if they had terminal cancer. As soon as you get that full treatment into you, it brings your body back to a good, healthy state, and then just continue to take 1 gram a month for the rest of your life. and you'll be surprised how healthy you'll be. All right. Now, a doctor's first concern should be to follow their own Hippocratic oath. If they did so, that would ensure that their patients are receiving the most harmless, effective treatments possible. If doctors were doing their jobs properly, they would not be prescribing liver-toxic chemicals, which means poison to the liver. Also, they would not suggest that we take so-called treatments like chemo and radiation, and they would not be giving us harmful CAT scans. I mean, the doctors know. Did they not understand the word carcinogenic? I think they probably invented it. So, carcinogenic means cancer-causing. They're using cancer-causing treatments to treat cancer. That doesn't make sense. It never has. And I've been screaming for years at audiences and people, stay away from CAT scans, PET scans. These scans are dangerous. And just recently here, just a couple weeks ago, they finally released a study that yes, CAT scans can cause cancer. So the next time your doctor tells you to go take a CAT scan, tell him to go take it himself. Now look at the destructive nature of vaccines that they try to give us and our children. If you wish to find out more about vaccines, look into the work of Dr. Rebecca Carley and her documentary, Vaccines, the New Weapons of Mass Destruction. Yeah, neither we nor our children should be taking these things. They're dangerous. And we all know about the autism and the mercury, the different things that are in these vaccines. They don't belong in our bodies. And again, the other great documentary is that Marketing and Madness. That's a very good documentary. After you watch the Marketing and Madness, you will be so much better informed about the trash the drug companies are supplying. I think it's just about time for us to put an end to this medical insanity, and for us all to begin using harmless natural medications like those that can be produced from the hemp plant to treat our medical problems. Now, all right. Now comes the long one. I hope you're ready. Now, everybody comes to me, they say, okay, well, they need the most of them need the oil right now. And if that's the situation, the only thing you can do, you don't have time to grow it. You have to go to a local underground grower somewhere and get the material you need to produce the oil. Now, when you're going out, when you're looking for the material, if you've never smoked cannabis before, then take somebody with you that has. Because what you're looking for strains that, and I mean, this is the way I tested it back in Canada. I would make a joint, smoke about half it. If it made me melt into the chair and made me want to go lay down, that's the medicine. That's the stuff I want. But if it energizes you, you smoke it and it energizes you, like that's usually what a sativa does, then stay away, well, like for internal use, try to stay away from the use of sativa to make the oil because it's too energizing. You know, the sleepy effect of the indica works miracles for healing. But you don't want a terminal cancer patient energized. It's not beneficial at all. Now, I'm always getting people coming at me and saying, all right, what strain do I grow? And I honestly wish I could answer that question. Because there literally, there's thousands and thousands of different strains of hemp. People are crossing the sativas and the indicas and the ruderalis. They're crossing them back and forth. And there's so many of them now, nobody seems to know what is what. And, I mean, the simple truth is, back in Canada, I was growing a strain called White Widow. It was very effective for treating cancer. That particular breed of White Widow, very effective for treating cancer, was one of the best painkillers I ever seen. This stuff would kill pain like nothing I ever seen. But when I came to Europe, the White Widow I seen over here was energizing. So wrong, different strain. And what happens is, there's all kinds of seed companies out there. So if you send to 5 different seed companies, and you ordered White Widow, and you got the seeds back, when you grew them, you would find out that you're growing 5 different types of plants. So there's no uniformity. The seed supply is not stable. But I always suggest that people go to the companies that originated the strains, if possible, to get the strains they need. Like I said, you're looking for a heavy indica, 20 to 25% THC that'll make you go lay down. Or some of the indica sativa crosses that are indica dominant. In other words, they have the trait of the indica to make you sleepy. Those work well too. But overall, I would suggest that most people try to refrain from using sativas to make the oil. They would be okay to make it from a sativa to treat the skin cancer or something like that. But as for ingesting it, some of these strains are just too energizing. So I think that should give you an idea of what you're looking for. And I really do wish, I'm hoping in the near future to get a research project underway. And I want to do some breeding with the most medicinal strains in the world. And then I want to make it so we do have a stable seed supply. So that when you get in touch with me and you need a treatment for cancer, all right, I'm sending you these seeds. These are the ones you need to grow. And then there's no more of this mix-up. But there's so many seed merchants out there right now that, I couldn't even give you a number. But actually the most powerful strains in the world are likely grown by small-time growers and breeders. Now, back in Canada, I did some breeding myself. I had 40 different strains. And I had about 10 that were very, very strong. One of the strains I had was so powerful, I've never seen anything like it. As a matter of fact, it's the strongest hemp I've ever seen. You could light a joint of that, and before it seemed like before the smoke got to your lungs, it was just like somebody punched you right between the eyes. And down you would go. And I used to call these joints all-day suckers because you couldn't smoke one. It would take all day and most of the night to smoke one. But it made magnificent medicine. Magnificent medicine. So I'm going to put a call out very soon now because I want to, where I was a breeder myself, I'm hoping that other breeders, other small-time breeders, will be willing to send me in some of their strongest seeds to help, with this effort to get this medicine out to the people. Because this is what we're after. We're after the most potent strains of hemp on this planet. And that's where we're going to find the best medicine. Okay. Oh, yes, and I'd like to thank David Dees for his illustrations. They've been very helpful. And like pictures like this. Isn't that wonderful? Well, I think you've all heard of chemtrails. Yeah. But they don't exist. They're just contrails. When I was a kid, I remember seeing the jets go. And you see the little contrail, and it's gone in 5 minutes. The other day in Zagreb, it went back and forth across the sky and looked like a checkerboard. Then the whole sky went milky. Who's doing this? And who has that right? And then you see all of these other drugs that they use, like Prozac and things like that. And then, we hear about like that movie Bowling for Columbine. But what they don't tell you is, like some of these kids, or most of these kids, that commit these crimes, they're taking Prozac, Paxil. It's the effect of these chemicals on the brains of these children, that are causing this violence. And that, and there's people, no matter who you are, nobody should be taking these chemicals. I like this. The AMA, we renamed it the American Murder Association, which was really much closer. And that blank look you see up there in that young fella, once they get these chemicals in them, that's just about what's in their head. There it is. Pills equal money. Over and over. And that's, like I said, that's the reason today that these drug companies are literally inventing new diseases. We have a pill. We'll heal you. Then you get on that pill, and then we got to give you another pill because that one gives you a side effect, and so on and so on. And before you know it, you're taking 6 or 8 pills. And really, I think the average person, by the time they're about 65, they're likely taking 4 to 5 medications a day. By the time you're 75, you can just about double that number. And this is what they're doing. And then it's bringing on diseases like Alzheimer's. They're calling Alzheimer's third stage or type 3 diabetes. That's what I heard lately. But I think a lot of the Alzheimer's that's happening today are being caused from the chemical drugs. Because they're taking this into their body for years. It's going to damage your body. And I think Alzheimer's is a result. Again, there's a good picture. It looks like a human being. After about a few years on the drugs, well, that's what's in you. And of course, they've made lots of money. Now, this is what I've been telling people for years. I have respect for surgeons. Doctors that know how to put us back together after we've been in a car accident or if we break a leg. We need doctors like this. And to me, it's more like about body mechanics. We need body mechanics that can put us back together. And this other side of medicine, the pill pushers. I mean, in reality, they're just drug dealers for the pharmaceutical companies, giving us harmful substances, and they don't care. So that part of medicine's got to go, but we do need the body mechanics. And there's that silly symbol again. It was pointed out to me earlier that this is something to do with the Masons or Templars. It should have been one stake around the pole, but anyway, it's there to represent medicine. But what really represents medicine is not that pole or those snakes. What represents medicine is what's behind it. That leaf. Now here's your classic indicas and sativas. Now these are the big fan leaves. As the plant grows, they develop these fan leaves. Now in pure indicas, they look like this. Much shorter, much broader leaves. The sativas are much longer and much narrower. But literally you can't tell today, from the look of a plant, what it is. Because they crossbred them. I've seen plants, like indicas are generally shorter. When you grow them outside, they're usually around my height, sometimes a little taller, but sometimes even shorter. But sativas, they can be like 4 meters, 5 meters tall. They grow tall. But where they've done all this crossbreeding, a plant can look like a sativa, but the effects of it could be like an indica. So you really can't tell anymore. Years ago, you could tell just by looking at them what they were. You can't do that anymore. Now, we're getting into making the medicine. It's so hard, you know, there's some very deep science here. First off, once you have the material, then basically what you need is a bucket. And in Run from the Cure, unfortunately, we had footage shot of me making the bud, or making the medicine with bud, but we lost the footage, and we needed to get the documentary out. So we showed it in our documentary. It was actually a whole plant extraction. There was leaves and things besides the buds. So that's what we put in there. But for cancer treatments, I use the bud. The leaves and things like that, I like to use the leaves for oils for skin treatments. You know, because your life is not at stake, you know, for a skin treatment. But for internal conditions like serious cancers, you need the very best, and that comes from the bud. All right, you put it in a bucket. And you add your solvent. Now, there's many, many different types of solvent you can use. You can use alcohol, ether. My favorite is naphtha. In Canada, we call it naphtha. In the Czech Republic, they call it benzene. Now, here in Croatia, it's called benzene. And all it really is paint thinner. Or you can get it as a parts wash, to wash greasy parts. It's used as a solvent for that. It's quite volatile. It boils at about 75 degrees Celsius. And it's a very good solvent to work with. All solvents are poison. No matter what you're using, they're all poison. But there is no solvent left in the oil if it's made properly. And there's other substances like acetone. I've never made oil with acetone, but I see no reason why it wouldn't work very well. And acetone is readily available. Alcohol does a pretty good job. If you can get, what you need is pure alcohol, like 99 or 100%, and that's hard to get. But the only fault that alcohol has is it dissolves some of the chlorophyll off the plant material. So when you make oil with alcohol, it usually comes out darker than as if you had made the oil from with ether or naphtha or benzene. Because it's usually more golden if you make the oil with naphtha or benzene. But alcohol still makes good oil, and you can still cure cancer with it. All right, you put it in the bucket, and usually what I do, I put the plant material in the bucket, and then I dampen it with a solvent. And then I take a stick, and I start working it. And I crush it up, and then I put it, once the material is crushed down, then I add some more solvent until the solvent is just over top of the plant material. And then I just work the plant material for about 3 minutes. Just work it, do it quite hard. And what you're doing, you're dissolving the resin off the plant material. So once you've worked it for 3 minutes, have another bucket there. Pour the contents, the solvent oil mix, pour it into another bucket. That's your first run. That takes off 75 to 80% of the available resins and cannabinoids. That first run. Then take your bucket with the solvent, or with the plant material still in it, refill it again with solvent, again just over the top. Work it for about another 3 minutes. At the end of that, then pour that in with the first run. Then you have the first and second run. Well, the second run gets the other 20% or so that's left. So now you have the first and second run together. Now take those two, take the two, well, they're both mixed together in a bucket anyway, and then set up a coffee filter with a funnel. Now these water containers will do quite nicely. Set a funnel up, put a coffee filter in, and filter that the solvent oil mix through the coffee filter. That takes out any plant material or anything like that, because you want this oil as pure and clean as possible. And usually, like the solvents, like benzene or alcohol, they look like water. But once the oil is in them, it'll turn them like a golden color. So they look somewhat like gasoline. So it's quite easy to tell. You can see the oil there. And it's that golden color, that's the medicine. All right. Now once you filter that off through the coffee filters, now you take, in Canada, unfortunately it's hard to get rice cookers here in Croatia for some reason. The proper way really to make this medicine is to use a still and then reclaim your solvents. I think it's a better way, but most people don't understand distilling. So these simple devices called rice cookers, you can get them in Canada for like $20 or $30. We'll buy you a great big one. And if you set the rice cooker up, then you pour the solvent in, the solvent oil mix in. Make sure you have a fan behind it to blow the fumes away. And you're in a very well ventilated area, because these fumes are explosive. If you get a lighter or a cigarette, the whole thing could go poof, and you don't want that to happen. So just make sure you're in a very well ventilated area and follow the instructions. If you go to our website, the movie shows you how to do it, but if you go to the website, there's a very detailed written instructions there, and they explain every little thing about this. So in reality, a 10-year-old could make the medicine. But now you fill your rice cooker up about 3/4 full to allow some room for it to boil. Turn your rice cooker on. The rice cookers have 2 heat settings, high and low. And the beauty of the rice cooker is they won't allow the oil to ever be burned. You see, rice burns very easily. So these cookers are designed that when the temperature gets up in the cooker automatically kicks itself on to low heat. So there's no danger of burning the oil. Because if your oil gets up to over 300 degrees, once you get up and around 340 degrees Fahrenheit, between 340 and 390 degrees Fahrenheit, all the cannabinoids vaporize off the oil. So if you get too much heat, you'll ruin your oil. But if you use a rice cooker, there's no danger. I've never heard anybody say that they ever ruined their oil using a rice cooker. Now, if you have a gallon or 2 gallons, it depends on how big your rice cooker is, but you just keep, as it boils down in the cooker, you just keep adding more salt. Like when it's almost down, then put more solvent in. Keep doing that until you have no solvent oil mix left. It's all in the rice cooker. Then when it's boiling down for the last time, just watch it as it comes down, And then usually what I do, I add a few drops of water. You know, if you were doing half a kilo, I would add 10 drops of water. If you were doing a full kilo, maybe 15, 16 drops. And really, what the water's for, I think it helps release the solvent residue a little bit better. And it actually, I think, can help protect the oil from burning somewhat. So, you just watch it and it keeps boiling down and down, and when it gets down very low, so there's only a bit left in the bottom of the rice cooker, I usually pick the cooker up, and I keep the fan blowing on it, and I just keep the cooker up and I swirl it. And in no time, it'll boil down, it'll bubble, and then it'll start crackling. You'll hear this crackling sound. And at first it looks like smoke coming off it, but it's not. It's steam from the water that you added. So once the crackling stops, the rice cooker actually kicks itself onto low heat automatically. And then once that's done, you can just pour the oil off into a small stainless steel measuring cup and take that measuring cup and put it on a coffee warmer. And I used to put a little piece of cardboard on top of the measuring cup to heat it up a little bit more. But all you're doing is evaporating the water. And there's natural terpenes in some strains too that will give you little bubbles. But once the water has evaporated off and once the natural terpenes are gone, then the oil basically levels out. Now it's still running because it's hot. And at that point, when it's not showing very much or very little activity, then you can draw it up into the syringes. And it's, while it's still warm. And then you set the oil, I just put it in a cup. And when the oil, when it comes down to room temperature, the oil turns into a thick grease. And it's very easy to dispense. Usually, from the time I start till the time I'm done, I can usually produce a cancer treatment in about 3 hours. And anybody in this room can do the same. There's nothing to it. And so like I said, there's no rocket science, and once you understand this medicine, it takes all the mystery out of medicine. We've all been pounded into our heads, well, medicine is a deep, dark science, and the only person that knows anything about this is the doctors. We don't know anything. Well, you do now, and you're better than any doctor out there, because at least you're using real medicine. Now, I always use the plastic syringes, like these ones here. You can get them in different sizes, but for long-term storage, if you wanted to put the oil away for a few years, I would suggest, for a few months, this is fine. But if you want to put it away, put it in a good glass jar with a good tight lid. And as far as I'm concerned, there's only 3 enemies that this oil has. That's heat, light, and air. Now, air can't get into it because it's a thick grease. The air can't enter. So if you store it in a cool, dark place, that takes care of the light and the heat. So I think actually if you put this oil in a bottle and you didn't open that bottle for 1,000 years, I think when you did, the oil would just be the same as when you put it there. And just every bit as potent. So this is medicine that doesn't have an expiry date. Yes. Now here's another problem I'm having today, and it's a very big one. I just got this the other day, a picture from a guy in Canada. You notice it says www.phoenixtears.ca. That's my website. There's fools back in Canada putting this on syringes and selling it. And I have nothing to do with anyone that produces oil. So it's a gimmick. What people have to realize, these same people today that are supplying oil, in many cases, 3 or 4 years ago, before they ever heard of me, they were drug dealers. They were making the oil and selling it for people to smoke. Then I come along, and people have become aware of what this wonderful medicine can do. Well, now they've just switched over. Now they're making medicine. Now they have honor. No, they don't have honor. And I'm not saying everyone that supplies oil is a crook. But I think you're going to find the vast majority of them are. And what's happening is the public are going in. I get contacts all the time, emails, saying, I bought your oil, but it doesn't work. I wonder why. Because it's not my oil. And some drug dealer has sold them low-grade oil at a great big price. Because they don't give a damn about your health. And this is something that's going to come to a stop, and I hope very, very soon. And when I see things like this, you know, to have the nerve to use my website and put it right on there, because you know where the complaints are going to come, don't you? So, you know, this is the world we live in, but this type of thing has to come to a stop. Doctor's prescription. Well, as I said, you know, we have these doctor's prescriptions. In Canada, we have what you call the Marijuana Access Program, which in truth limits it so there's only a few people in Canada that are allowed to have it. I mean, as I said before, no doctor, you shouldn't need a doctor's prescription for a God-given plant. I mean, this plant was here long before we ever invented the word doctor. But today, you have to go to your doctor. He gives you a prescription. And in my case, I had to go to the doctor. He had to refer me to 2 specialists. Then they, in turn, would have to send 2 big reports into Health Canada. And then it was up to Health Canada or not whether they would allow me to grow my own hemp. But the only problem is, under Canadian law, there's no provision for anyone to gather the resins or to produce the essential oil. They'll let you have a permit to smoke pot or to break it up and put it in cookie dough, which really doesn't taste very good. But there's no provision under Canadian law, and in many countries it's the same, for anyone to produce the oil. The oil is a medicine, they know it, and they don't want you to have it. Okay. We got next. Oh, yes. Well, you know, we've tried to reach so many famous people over the years. We tried to reach him too, but too late for that. This gentleman, Mr. Castro, 5 or 6 years ago, when we first heard that he had cancer, and I sent him an email, and 2 or 3 supporters sent him an email. But I never heard nothing back. I've had several last year, or a few months ago here, I had 2 or 3 different people contacted me about Michael Douglas, because he was dying. I see he's not doing that right now. They say he's doing better. So I have a sneaking suspicion he might be taking the oil. I have had some contact with some Hollywood types, and they have taken the message back. So I'm not sure, but I hope for Michael's case, or I hope for his sake, that he is taking the oil. And if he's recovering, I can't imagine what else would be doing it. Okay. Industrial hemp, my favorite topic. Well, basically, everything you see around you could be built from hemp. Our cars, our furniture, you know, building materials, insulation. It's just endless, you know. And when you think about the situation this world is in today, well, right at present, every day, 18,000 children starving to death on this planet. 18,000 every day. We can end that in no time. Hemp seeds are one of the most nutritious things on earth. Hemp will grow in areas where nothing else will grow. So that puts an end to starvation. Could you go back to the one just previous to that? All right, well, we already know about the medicinal use. Now, the next thing is really the energy this plant can give us. Now, they tell us, you know, that the oil supplies are running out, and there's an energy crisis, and we're going to be paying through the nose forever. Well, we don't have to be paying these people. There's no reason for it. Now, what we found, like when I look into this, in the past, when they made ethanol using cannabis, 1 acre of ethanol, or 1 acre would produce 500 gallons of ethanol. Now, 1 acre is only about 65 square meters. Not a very big area. But 1 acre of hemp will produce 500 gallons of ethanol. Well, that'll run your car a long ways. But there's new enzyme processes out right now that they tell me that they can get as much as 1,800 gallons of ethanol per acre. Now, 1,800 gallons would heat your house, heat your hot water, run your car, and you'd have a few hundred gallons left over. And don't think for a second that your car can't run on alcohol, because right now, over half the cars in Brazil are running on alcohol made from sugarcane. And hemp is a superior plant to sugarcane because it has the highest cellulose content. It'll produce the most alcohol by weight. I've seen myself when I was in the Czech Republic, some of the construction materials, the hempcrete, they make hemp beer, you can get hemp anything in some places. And the clothing, I have a pair of hemp pants myself, and it's the most comfortable clothing to wear. It just seems like it fits your body. And it's practically indestructible. And hemp is actually, now I want to explain to people too about hemp seed oil. Don't get hemp seed oil and the hemp oil that I make mixed up. Hemp seed oil is actually cold pressed hemp seeds. And that's the oil, that's the resulting oil. It's very beneficial for cardiovascular, and it's good for you. I mean, if you've got hemp seeds, you're never going to starve to death. And another great thing about the hemp plant, we're worried right now about the future of the bumblebee, and that will affect crops worldwide. But the hemp plant doesn't require the bumblebee. All it needs is a wind. The males actually produce the pollen, and the pollen is, the wind carries it to the females. And when they press these, like with a cold pressed hemp seed, the seed cakes itself are about the best animal feed you can get. Actually, they're good for humans too. The seed cakes are good for humans too. So there's another important thing. You see, again, we can make plastics from it that are biodegradable, no harm. Paper, again, we don't have to cut down the trees. And it makes a superior paper, a much better paper. Than what we use from trees, and we don't have to use all those chemicals to produce it. The paper industry uses a great number of chemicals. And the same thing with the cotton industry. Like half the pesticides that are used to spray cotton crops. Well, the way I look at it, if you grow the hemp plant, who needs cotton? I prefer the hemp clothing I prefer it over cotton. That pretty well covers it. Henry's car again. These are some of the houses that have been built with hemp. And there's the seeds, and that's this is some of the hemp insulation. And all right, benefits of hemp protein: no loss of muscle mass, superb quality and utilization, no bloating, no bad breath, no added extras, omega-3 and omega-6. It's basically a perfect food. But as I said, hemp seed oil or hemp seed, it's a totally different thing. The oil I make comes from the resin on the plant. And there's no THC, or very, very little THC, in hemp seeds. And that's the reason you don't get the healing effect with it. These again are hemp garments, yarns, ropes, different types of fiber, books. It's just endless. You can go on forever. All right. I'm going to be back up here for this. Oh, yeah. Well, I did stress the point about buying oil from other people, because if you go to my website, you'll see that I always recommend that for the time being, people should produce their own oil. At least that way you know what you have. If you buy it from some drug dealer in Amsterdam or somewhere else, you have no idea what you're getting. But hopefully, in the near future, that will all change. Sorry, folks, I'll be right with you. Now, another thing we need to talk about today, too, is is just the way these diseases are developing, diseases like cancer and whatnot, and why there's so much of it today. I mean, the hormones they shoot into animals, the antibiotics they give animals, monosodium glutamate, all the preservatives, pesticides. I mean, in truth, back in Canada, when I used to walk into a grocery store, I was afraid to buy anything because I knew it was all poison. And actually, North America has the most poisoned food supply on Earth. At least over here in Europe, they are a bit better about it. That's something to be aware of. So when you have diseases like, cancer, what happens is, I mean, when you have these chemicals in you, it compromises your immune system. It allows the cancer to develop. Now, I mean, right now, everybody in this room, you've all got cancer. So have I. We've all got cancer. Our bodies develop these cells every day. If your immune system is working properly, your immune system kills it. But when your immune system becomes compromised, because you're taking chemicals can compromise your immune system. And there's another thing, too, that I like to mention is about fluoride. Like, can somebody out there tell me why they use fluoride? You think it's for tooth decay? Don't think so. Hitler used it in his death camps to keep the inmates calmed down. Now today, most countries, most cities, they're putting fluoride in their water. Keep you calm down. Same thing. That way you don't cause any trouble. And when you're taking things like fluoride into your body, it's calcifying your pineal gland. Now, we went through reams of research for years trying to figure out how this oil worked. And I had just pretty well given up on the research because you couldn't get any, it didn't make any sense. All they always said was it may, it might, it could. In the end, you realize that you're not learning anything. But then a lady in the United States contacted me, and she said, have you looked into melatonin and the pineal gland? So I looked into it, and she sent me some reports. Her name was Batya Stark, and a great little researcher. And what we found is that people that have cancer, their melatonin levels are low. Well, melatonin is one of the greatest antioxidants on Earth, and that's what you need to fight cancer. But when you ingest the oil, your melatonin levels go up thousands of times, and it decalcifies your pineal gland. You see, like with the chemicals the doctors give us, and the fluoride, and some of the chemicals in the food, when your pineal gland becomes compromised, it stops producing the amount of melatonin it should. And also, it can bring on other problems, such as schizophrenia, because the pineal gland controls so many things in our body. Now, I mean, it's all fed to us through the endocannabinoid system, the CB1, CB2 receptors within our body. But then it goes in there, decalcifies the pineal gland, the melatonin travels to every cell in your body and wipes out the cancer. And that's the best description I can give you. Other scientific types will tell you it's a buildup of a fat molecule called ceramide, and when it comes in touch with cancer, it kills the cancer cell. But I like the pineal gland explanation better. And I think it better explains why this medicine works on so many different, conditions. All right. There's another thing I'd like to mention today, and you see this everywhere. The kids going today with the cell phones. Like cell phones, like anything that gives off an electromagnetic pulse or electromagnetic field. Like a cell phone, electric blanket, an electric alarm clock next to your bed can interfere with your health. Because our bodies run on we run on electrical impulses. If you're putting something that creates an electromagnetic field against your head and walking around with it all day, it's not going to do anything good for your health. So I hate to see this. I mean, kids today, it's just like they got these things glued to the side of their head or something. So to me, it's a very dangerous thing, and I hate cell phones. I try to avoid using them. Okay. Okay. Anyone can grow hemp, and anyone can produce this medication. So there's no possible way for the powers that be to control its use. In reality, even the rich and powerful are dying from cancer. Who stands against the right of us all to use this God-given plant to heal ourselves? No one has the right to stand against it. Are we all to continue suffering and dying so drug companies can make huge profits for their shareholders? I don't think so. So I'm asking those in positions of authority and those who have vast amounts of money and power to work with us to help bring this amazing medicine to the public. Properly produced oil is safe for all age groups, even children. And I think I've already discussed the Jamaican study, which explained why it is safe. So, we have to get beyond these lies. The industrial uses, the advantage here is getting people back on the land. Put them back in touch with nature. Get them back on the land where they belong. So, it's such an important thing because we've lost that self-sufficiency. When we lived on the little farms and stuff, we grew our own food, we cut our own wood. We were self-sufficient for the most part. But they told us years ago, leave the country, move into our towns and cities, work in our factories, and you'll have a good life. Well, that's what you do. In many cases, that's what many people did. Now they brought children up in these city environments. Their children are out there addicted to drugs and running with gangs. They have no life. But yet they're scared to go back because they don't even know how to farm anymore. People have to get back to reality. We need to go back to so many of the old ways that we used to use. They're the only things that make sense. Now, today we're able to produce over 50,000 different things from that plant. 50,000 different things. Just like I said, practically everything you're looking at right now can be made from hemp. When you look at the situation the world is in today, we would have to be insane to continue the destruction or the restriction against the use of this plant. Now these pictures here, the Gulf oil spill. Isn't that a pretty picture? These poor animals, birds, suffering, dying. And now, at the present time, we also have that horrible disaster in Japan. This before and after. As I said, radiation is a silent killer and it's an invisible killer. And this is, right now, it's poisoning our planet at a very alarming rate. Of course, the governments have lied to us again. It's not as bad as Chernobyl. No, it's 10,000 times worse. But leave it to the government. Is this what we really need to do to create energy? Why can't we just grow our hemp, make our own energy? We don't need nuclear power plants. We don't need to be drilling holes in Mother Earth. We don't need to be strip mining. We're ruining our own environment. We're ruining the very earth we live on. It has to come to an end. Okay. When will we finally realize that all these wars fought over oil reserves and power are pointless? How much money do these people need? And why are our young people going and fighting these stupid wars for no reason? And what about this wonderful war on drugs we hear about? Oh, Nixon started that one in the 70s. The war on drugs. We're going to wipe out drugs. Well, they've done a great job, haven't they? Now they got soldiers up there in Afghanistan guarding the poppy fields. Good job. The simple truth is the biggest drug dealers on this planet are the governments. Everybody knows about the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, bringing in cocaine from South America in the 1980s. Now, the so-called war on terror we're in the middle of, when the Taliban was in charge in Afghanistan, they tore up all the opium. They tore up the opium poppy. They planted hemp. But now that we have come to bring them freedom and democracy, they tore up all the hemp, and now the Canadian and American soldiers and soldiers from other countries are up there guarding the opium poppy fields. 80% of the heroin that's available on the street comes from Afghanistan. Who are the drug dealers? They tell us that we can't have marijuana or hemp to heal ourselves, while they go out and they grow vast fields of poppies that are, that produce opium that's addictive. They're the drug dealers. They're the criminals, not us. Why is it that the only thing we have ever got better at is destroying each other? We're supposed to have the capacity to learn from our own mistakes, but yet we never do. It's time for us all to realize that there is a much better way to live, and if we work together, it's right at our fingertips. We have to start promoting knowledge, peace, and understanding. And we have to start educating our children and ourselves. Can you bring that? Oh, yeah. We have to start educating both our children and ourselves in what is the real truth. After all, do we as humans not have the right to know? Of course we do. We cannot put the blame on governments or the medical and legal systems. For those who work in these fields have been manipulated also. Politicians, doctors, judges, lawyers, police officers, and their families all are dying and suffering needlessly too. So the only rational thing to do would be to put our heads together and come up with a solution. And the only solution at present is to start growing hemp everywhere and to use it in every possible way. Since the death of Jack Herer, I have stepped into his role as leader of the hemp movement. It was Jack's dream that everyone, again, be given the right to freely use this plant to better our way of life. Jack always said that he didn't know if hemp will save the world, but he did know it was the only thing that could. Yes, we can make things better for all of us. We can have good health, end starvation, and begin to understand how we as humans should be living. So I urge all of you to tell your friends and to wake up your neighbors to the fact that there is hope and that this wonderful plant can again put us back on the right track. Okay. All right. Well, this is the only thing that can put us back on the right track, believe me. Well, really what we're going to do now, we'll be having the question and answer period in about 10 minutes. We're going to take a 10-minute break. And all I can do is say, my name is Rick Simpson, and I wish you all good health and long life.
Mi nemamo vremena za pauzu, pa vas molim da ostanete, pa ćemo još postaviti pitanja. Ono što vam za kraj, odnosno prije pitanja, ono nije još kraj, moram reći da ovo što ste danas slušali je informativno, znači mi ne propagiramo korištenje, naravno jer je to illegal, zabranjeno. Tako da vas pozivam da se dodatno educirate o tome, to je bio poanta ovog skupa. Za sve što kasnije napravite, naravno sami ste odgovorni, mi ne možemo odgovarati za to što radite. Nije da vas plašim. Dakle, pitanja mogu... Question, can we start with questions?
We can do questions now?
Yeah, no pauza, please. We are out of time. Može? Da li je gospodin to patentirao? Saša, molim te prevedi.
Nudi suradnju na Hrvatskoj patentiramo.
Da li je patentirao, nudi čovjek suradnju?
Nobody should have the right to patent the plant, including the American government.
Može pitanja, slobodno dignite ruku, reci.
You mentioned 60-gram therapy. How many drops is that and how many days?
Well, if you go to our website, the dosage instructions are right up there. If you look, if you want to know how many drops are in a gram, there's roughly about 25 drops from an eyedropper to make 1 gram. So you'll have to multiply that by 60 to get the number you're looking for. But the dosage instructions are all on our website.
Hi. Do you have any information or experience with mixing the hemp oil with the butter? Because there are a lot of films on YouTube with doing that.
I know well, a lot of people are mixing it with olive oil, butter. There's all types of different ways to do extractions. But when I produce this oil, I produce it in the purest form possible. I don't want it mixed with butter. I don't want it mixed with olive oil. To me, that's just watered down hemp medicine. You know, you want medicine in its purest form.
Dignite ruke ako želite postaviti pitanje, izvolite samo.
For psoriasis, with what do you mix the oil for external use?
Tinctures work very well.
Because it's very thick.
Well, I mean, you can mix it with any good skin cream. Mix the oil in with any good skin cream and treat psoriasis. But I like to use it.
Do you have to heat it up a little to make it softer? The oil, I mean.
Well, no, because the oil is a thick grease.
Yeah, no.
But if you're going to mix a tincture up, or if you're going to mix it in with skin cream, then you're going to have to heat it up a little bit. And the same as when you take a small jar of alcohol, heat it up like with water, put it in warm water to heat it up, and then pour some oil, a small amount of oil in it, and that gives you your tincture. And if you just drip it on with an eyedropper, like 1 drop will spread out to an area about that big, and spread out over a big area. So it can save you oil that way. But for severe psoriasis, I've had people that had psoriasis on their elbows just use it topically, and it actually took it and cured it. But if you've got severe psoriasis, topically and ingesting. Yep.
Can we do next?
Zanima me kako se manifestira to ulje na transplantirane organe, pošto smo tu ipak vezani na neke lijekove bez kojih ne možemo.
Well, actually, I've had very little experience with organ transplants. Basically, like I said, if you take the oil, you can rejuvenate your own vital organs and you can avoid the transplant. But, I mean, people that have other people's organs in them, they're going to be taking anti-rejection drugs for the rest of their lives. But I think the oil would be very, I mean, I can't swear, but I can't see why the oil wouldn't be very beneficial.
Hi. I'm interested more in this political or cultural settings. I mean, you've been into this thing for a long part of your life, so to speak. What do you think, what is necessary to get the political and cultural acceptance of this thing going on? I mean, this is all like we're illegals and we have to have some kind of paranoid thing going on. What would be the proper way to get this on a acceptable level, so to speak?
Well, the system that's been controlling this world, really they're being surrounded, by the truth. And even people within the system are starting to sell the system out because they know this medicine does work, and we all do deserve the right. But what I see here in Croatia, I mean, I've seen several marches when I was in Zagreb, thousands of people marching because they didn't like this form of government, they didn't like the other form of government, but they had no direction. Well, this is a direction. Here's a medicine that can give you jobs, put millions of people to work, heal the population. If enough of us are standing there screaming it at our governments, they have to give it to us. It's our right. But right now, it's a matter of building up the numbers of people we need. And we have to have the people that know what the truth about what this plant can really do. But that day is coming quick.
Ja bih imao samo jedno pitanje. U prostatu rak. Ali sad je u stazi gdje je ušao u kostima.
I got good news for you. Wait, as far as I know, I mean, I've treated a great number of people with prostate cancer. I've treated a great number of people with your condition. I've never lost one. Get on the oil. Stay away from the medical system and their treatments. Start taking the oil. Also, change your diet. More fresh vegetables, juicing machines. Get your body's pH up. Natural things like eating a couple the seeds from 2 apples every day. It gives you a good dose of B17, also known as Laetrile, which has in its own right, has a pretty good track record for cancer. But the oil is what really works the magic. But I like to see people use other natural treatments along with the oil. You know, why not give yourself every chance possible? But your situation should be very curable.
Možemo dalje. Slobodno dižite ruke kasnije.
I just have a question. What about anemia? So low blood cells, does it help produce more or does it just enhance them getting on? My friend has anemia, low blood cells and low iron in the blood.
Well, I mean, the oil gets your immune system working properly again, and it does a lot to balance, you know, your system. It's like I said, when you see people with like leukemia, because it brings their white blood cell count down so quickly. Well, the oil wants to make you healthy, and it's going to do it. If you take that oil right, you'll see amazing things.
Do you know that in Croatia there are legal practices that allow growing of 15 plants? Legal practices, not laws. Allowing growing 15 plants and treats it as a minor prekršaj. Yeah. Minor, how? Ok, da li znate da je u Hrvatskoj postoje sudske prakse?
Dok smisla pitanje, crveni Peugeot 206, samo maknite.
Here in Croatia, okay, I will manage to say it in English. There are legal practices that are allowing some court decisions, some cases they are allowing to have 15 plants for own purposes and treat it as a minor, not big,
no big offense.
No big offense. So and when it's for the drug dealing and everything, then it could be. But when it's for the medicine,
right,
maybe these practices could be used as a basis for this development, this kind of
the use
using
of the medicine is the only thing that's ever going to have this plant recognized. You know, the medicinal use will get it legalized. I mean, all these hemp activists going around blowing pot smoke in people's faces, that's never going to legalize it. But when you see somebody cured with cancer or multiple sclerosis, then people see the real benefit. And that, in the end, that will legalize this plant again.
Samo da nešto kažem. Kad smo pripremali ovaj skup, naravno zanimalo nas je da li radimo nešto što je legalno. Zašto nije patentirano? Zato što ako patentiraš, onda samo ti možeš to raditi. Ako patentiraš, samo ti možeš to raditi. Samo ti možeš to raditi ako patentiraš, samo tako. Možda imamo sljedećeg Rockefellera ovdje. Ono što sam htio reći, da smo provjeravali na policiji, zvali smo prekršajni sud, da li smijemo ovo raditi uopće i zanimljivo, upravo sa prekršajnog smo dobili, sa prekršajnog smo dobili da imaju, par puta su imali da je čovjek neki gajio za sebe i predočio je dokaze da je to lijek i onako što to oči su dopustili. Dakle, ima slučajeva. Mislim da ne piše da je to tako, nego oni to naprave, valjda ako je jako jasno na svoju moralnu odgovornost. Prosto što sam ti uzeo. Možemo još sekundu, jer je dosta važno pitanje.
I was speaking in English, so he understands. Dakle, sudovi donose odluke prema zakonima ili prema nekim donesenim odlukama od strane sudova. Dakle, ako postoji odluka koja je donesena, u Hrvatskoj takve odluke postoje i rasli su od 3 do na kraju 15 biljki, onda se obrana može pozvati na taj slučaj koji je. Dakle, to će znači tretira se kao beznačajno djelo. I postoji presedan, postoje odluke na koje se obrana može pozivati i onda u tom slučaju zapravo nema posljedica. Postoji proces, ali nema posljedica. Nema djela.
Ovako, interesira me da možemo sa tim uljem liječiti alergije razne, tako.
Oh yes, it's a very effective treatment for allergies. I've had many people that had severe allergies that swelled up and big blotches and they would bleed. Go on the oil, took care of all of the allergies. One thing I wanted to mention to folks here, if you're desperate and you have to go looking to try to buy some of this material, now the best prices I've heard of here in Croatia is around $3,000 a kilo. But if you have a loved one that's dying, from what I understand, if you go to Bosnia, you can buy a kilo for somewhere around 500 or 600 euros. So, keep that
Znači, koliko je potrebno biljki za 60 grama ulja?
Depends on how big you grow them. I mean, I've seen plants that had a kilo on one plant grown outdoors. Some strains will put on tremendous amounts of weight. But like indoor crops, they usually only grow the plants about this high. So it will take probably maybe 15 or 16, to get a kilo? No, it would probably take about 30 of these small plants from indoors. But in the great outdoors, these plants can become huge.
Interesira me ovako, rak pluća u začetku je rak pluća i šizofrenija.
If you haven't had any chemo or radiation, by all means don't take any. But when we get these people that have taken, even with lung cancers, if you had no chemo or radiation, there's a very good chance you can beat your disease. But you have to get on the oil. I would suggest that you use a vaporizer. Vaporize it into your lungs, but eat the oil too. Do both. That way the oil, the cancer is being hit with cannabinoids from both directions. And it can have I like seeing the effects with lung cancer because people that are really showing, the bad effects of the disease, you can almost see them improving every day. And people that's like myself that smoke, I don't even tell the people that have lung cancer, I don't even tell them to stop smoking. Oh, indicas. Yeah.
Here, did you see any difference in solvents? Like, for instance, if you took alcohol and used it, and naphtha or benzene, and then the residue, did it have the residue from the alcohol or from the benzene?
No, my oil has been tested. Dr. Hanoush, Dr. Lemire Hanoush in Hebrew University, he's done tests on my oil. No solvent residues. None whatsoever. So there's no, if you make the oil properly, there's no danger. And the funny thing about this, even if there was poison, the effects of the oil would neutralize it.
If we take that oil in other way, how it's manifest to memory?
How does the oil affect your memory?
If I smoke, I forget lots of things every day.
Well, I smoke when I can, and I don't forget anything. I think, as we all age, our memories aren't quite what they used to be. But I have never seen where this oil has ever interfered with my memory. As a matter of fact, it's a proven scientific fact that this oil, or the cannabinoids, will grow new brain cells in the hippocampus. So if anything, I think you'll probably get smarter.
Next one.
Metastaze na jetrima. Nemam vremena da se legalizira u Hrvatskoj. Gdje se može kupiti ulje? Ono nije ilegalno.
Možeš ruke da budemo spremni za brzo idemo dalje. Tamo? Okay.
Oh, where can you buy it? Well, there's nowhere you can buy it. That's the problem. I mean, if you go to these dealers and people that are selling it, you don't know what you're getting. If I were you, I'd take a trip to Bosnia. I mean, the medicine's not hard to make, and if you can get it, cheaply, like the way you should be able to, that's what I would do. I wish I could help you, brother. I mean, I'd make it in a minute, but of course the government would throw me in jail. So it's the best I can do.
We have next one here.
Ako možete nešto reći o multipli sklerozi. Dijelom.
Ford Focus Rijeka 716 OE. Priveden je. Molim da ga makne. Znači Rijeka 716 OE. Ford Focus. Ne trebate prevoditi Riku.
Well, there's nothing much more to say about MS other than it's curable. Yeah, okay. There's really not much more to say about MS, other than it's curable. But it's like I said, people that have had MS for a long time, have taken a lot of medications, have suffered the damages of the disease, are going to take longer to cure. But if you can get growing your own hemp and producing the medicine, then it doesn't matter. It might take 6 months, it might take a year, but I firmly believe, and I've seen, people, you can get out of that wheelchair. You can get people out of the wheelchair. So just get them on the oil, and everyone has their own tolerance. Everyone can take this at a different rate. So all I encourage people to do is to stay in their comfort zone with the use of this medicine, and take it as quickly as they can.
Next one.
Hi. What about the use of cannabis oil for strengthening the cardiovascular system? I have a friend, my best friend's dad has a halfway shot liver, and his heart works at about 20% efficiency. Can it be, used to alleviate the effects?
Well, of course, yes. Like I said, this rejuvenates vital organs. But people have to realize that, like I said, when you get on this medicine, in most cases, you can get rid of all the pharmaceutical poison. Just use this medicine and give it a chance. Let Mother Nature show you what she can do.
Peugeot 779. Ko da radi na Bingu?
Ne mogu se pojasniti za artritis. Kako bi se trebalo uzmati na usta ili na sklopove stavljati?
For what? Arthritis? Okay. You can treat arthritis both ways. You can put it right, if you had arthritic knees, you can take an oil with a salve and mix it right on and put it on your knee, and you would probably find that you would get quite a bit of relief. But the main relief is eating the oil. That's when the magic happens.
Next one.
Ja sam već na kemoterapiji, a molim vas, koliko ne bi mogla nabaviti uvjetom. Sad sam već
Imamo li još ruku? Tamo, evo sad ću doći. Evo kad se... Ja se ispričavam kad se...
Stvar sa artrozom.
Artroza. Kako je stvar sa artrozom?
Dennis, could you tell me what that last question was? What is that? Some of these medical terms, I mean, they all have big long names. I'm not sure what that is, dear.
Ko neko bolje zna prevesti, nek nam pomogne, jer vidi malo. Dok raspraviš gospođu u bijeloj majici, gospođi, prevedi samo kako se prevodi, pa ćemo mi na drugo pitanje, pa ćemo se vratiti.
Koja prehrana ide za prostatu, ako može gospodin da kaže?
Koja prehrana je za prostatu, da li se može nešto o tome reći?
Prostate cancer. Well, if any type of cancer, you should be looking at getting more plant protein. Raw fruits, vegetables, juicing machines, that's what you need. Plant protein fights cancer growth, but animal protein promotes cancer growth. And even things like white sugar. Use natural sweeteners, and you'll have much better results. But I don't tell people to stop eating animal protein completely. I think eggs are good for you. But you can still eat a small amount of animal protein, but predominantly try to get the raw fruits and vegetables into the cancer patient. That's what they need.
Da li smo dobili nekakav prijevod tamo? Ok, sad čekat ćemo. Vratit ću se na vas. Jeste uspjeli? Evo ti, pa reci kako. Pa idemo dalje.
Osteoarthritis.
Osteoarthritis? Yeah, all forms of arthritis. All forms. It'll work for all forms of arthritis. You know, arthritis is just inflammation. And it doesn't make any difference what type it is. And this is the greatest anti-inflammation there is. So the oil will work.
Yes, my mother has a case. Her artery in the left leg is clogged, like completely. And her right heart valve is every day getting weaker and weaker. So I'd like to ask you, did you have any cases like that, and did the oil help to unclog the arteries, like some other medications that are prescribed for that kind of cases? Thank you.
Well, I mean, it does increase, circulation. There's no question about it. And it undoes damage, like one of the patients back home, he had a blood clot in his lower leg. And he had all this nerve damage. He actually couldn't even walk anymore. They had to put a walking brace. And he got on that oil, threw away the brace, and now he can walk as good as I can. And it has eliminated practically all the damage. So if anything can help, I would say the oil.
Ja bih samo prije da proslijedim sljedeće pitanje, bih zamolio da, ako ima neko ko je iz medicinske struke, zaista bih volio da on kaže svoje mišljenje, da pita nešto, da imamo i nekakvu kontru, da ne ispadne, da stvarno nešto vodimo na ovu stranu. Izvoli.
I was wondering if you heard of the MMS, chlorine nitrate, I think. Chlor dioxide, I'm sorry, and it lists the same benefits as your oil. And if you have heard of it, I was wondering if you can tell us what would be the main difference.
What type of oil?
This is a compound that they call it MMS. It's
mineral supplement.
Yes, and I was wondering if you know anything about that.
No, I mean, a lot of people have contacted me that have used Laetril, Medical Miracle Supplement, Joanna Budwig protocols. There's all kinds of these things out there. But I don't care. I mean, if there's something better than this oil, I'd like to see it. To me, this is the treatment. But if these things that you're talking about are natural, then it's probably not going to harm the patient any.
Imamo sljedeće pitanje.
I have a question for. Did you make oil separately from leaves and separately from buds?
Yes.
And did you notice any difference between them?
Oh yeah, huge difference. The oil from the bud was many times stronger. You know, oil from leaves and shake are good for skin conditions, but if you've got serious cancer, you want the oil from the bud. It's very best.
Možemo još pitati, imamo. Vidim da se polako razilazite, pa samo koji idete, koji ne možete još ostati, vas pozdravljam, hvala što ste bili s nama, još imamo par pitanja. Žao mi što nemate ljepšu postesu od mene.
Zanima me šta misli o korištenju sjemenka iz kajsija i marevica, jel? Šta on misli o tome, da li i to i B vitamin?
Apricot seeds.
Apricots. Yeah, Laetrile. B17 Laetrile. Yes. Well, I mean, one of the best books I ever read on the subject of cancer was called World Without Cancer. And it was about Laetrile. It was a story of Laetrile. And there have been several people that have actually cured their cancer with the use of this. But it doesn't work for everyone. And I've had a lot of people that called me over the years that we use Laetrile. And quite a few of them said that once they started using the Laetrile, the tumor stopped growing. But it didn't take the tumor away. But when they got on the oil, it took the tumor away. But so that's the reason I support the use of Laetrile. I think it's beneficial. B17 is good stuff.
Pozivam još ako ima neko da diže ručicu. Ja bih rekao iz jednog svog iskustva koji nema baš puno veze s ovim, da možda neke stvari vrijede za ove ljude, neke za one. Mislim da se treba najprije educirati, što više znate o sebi i o tome što radimo. Da vam sad ne ispričam u svu moju priču, da će odužiti. Imaš pitanje, reci.
Have you tried maybe mixing hemp oil with other essential oils and while making creams and I don't know?
Well, I've used it. I used to like to mix it with actually there's a cream back in Canada that's made from hemp seed oil. The white cream has a very nice smell to it. I used to love to mix the oil with that. But no, I haven't really get into mixing it in with other essential oils so much. Just skin creams and salves. But that's about all. Pardon me? What's she say? Can it be mixed? Yes. Oh, yes. Well, if you're just mixing an oil with an oil or a salve, you know, you usually have to heat them up to get them to mix good. But yeah, it can be mixed.
Mene zanima sativa, nekoliko ste puta spomenuli i njena ljekovita svojstva. Obzirom da se ona može nabaviti lakše u susjedstvu, kod nas još ne. Znam jer se mislim baviti s time. Zanima me da li preporučujete sativu za nekakve bolesti? I za koje ne? Jer ste rekli da se ne koristi za nekakve bolesti raka.
Well, what's the purpose? I have no problem with anybody growing any strain of hemp here, but if you're looking for medicine, if I were you, I would look towards the indicas.
Not like cure, but in general, but for what? Zašto?
What?
Industrial purpose.
Industrial purposes. Oh yes, well yeah, anything, the sativas grow the longest, the tallest, the longest fiber. Right. Now you want the sativas for that. Yeah.
Me again. Did you hear about Codex Alimentarius? And what is its point on hemp?
Well, actually, Codex Alimentarius, the outlawing of the natural, I think a lot of us are aware of what's going on. They're trying to take the nutrition out of the food and outlaw anything that's beneficial. But, you know, people talk about this being something that's happening right now. Well, it is. But the truth is, back in Canada, it began to happen in 1923 when they outlawed the hemp plant. So we started the outlawing of the natural 88 years ago in Canada, and it's not right. No one should have the right to do this. And why would why do we want them to let you? Pretty soon you won't even be able to buy an orange because it's got vitamin C in it. We have to put a stop to this. And I think really people should be marching in the streets over this because this Codex Alimentarius is total insanity. It's just a game that they're using for the drug. Like they breed, like Monsanto and companies like that are going to breed the nutrients out of the food, and then that leaves you at the mercy of the doctors and drug companies. Yeah, and then no vitamins. If you're going to get a vitamin, you have to go to your doctor. That's stupid.
Imamo li još pitanja? Stižem. Amen.
Did you hear about the European Union wanted to legislate the new law outlawing any forms of medical treatments that involve natural plants and such?
Well, if the European Union wants to outlaw any natural treatments, I wish them good luck, because it ain't going to happen. People are going to use this no matter what, because this knowledge is spreading, and this does cure people. So, who's willing to die because the government said, what, are we supposed to die because that's what the government wants? The European Union better grow up.
They don't want us in.
You're lucky you're not in.
Možda još neko pitanje, pa idemo pomalo prema kraju. Ili ću ja postaviti jedno pitanje, evo zanima me, s obzirom da se od opijum i morfij i to se koristi u medicinske svrhe, ovo se ne koristi, pa me samo zanima, ako možete reći razliku. Please. Nisam više koncentriran, sad sam posredi.
Well, if we were using this medicine properly, there's no more reason to use opiates. Back home in Canada, I had a man come to me quite a few years ago. His wife was dying from bone cancer, and they only gave her a week to live. And he called me on the phone, and when he did, he was crying. He said that they have her on morphine drips, she's on pain patches, she's in agony. They can't kill the pain. But there's strains of hemp that kill pain that morphine won't even touch. This man came to me and he got the oil from me. He called me up the very next day. My wife's on a pain. So why do we need opiates? We've got something better, the hemp plant.
I would just like to thank for this lecture and everything, because I think it really got to the people, and I hope that people won't just go home and forget all these things, then ask a question, wow, can I really make the change, happen? Because I think we all should work for it, from the bottom of us to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ja mislim da je polako vrijeme da s ovim lijepim što je gospodin rekao i završavamo. Osim ako nema baš neko nešto za laku noć.
Thank you all for coming and it's been a pleasure.
Hvala što ste bili s nama. Idemo na večer i educirajte se ljudi. Slobodno ako želite još nešto pitati, dok mi pospremimo, možete, evo, gospodin Rik je tu, ako imaš snage.
Da li